Good evening and welcome to the regular committee meeting of the Board of Directors of North Bend School District. I apologize for our late start, but I'd also like to announce that we had an executive session to discuss personnel matters prior to the meeting, and that's what took us a little bit longer. We will be hearing a variety of topics, a few tonight, just the reading program and also a discussion on the budget. After the board has discussed those and asked questions of the presenters, then we will open it to the audience, at which time I will recognize you if you raise your hand. Please come to the microphone when I indicate and give us your name and address for the record so that we can keep track of that. Also, I'd like you to be aware that we are videotaping this for play later on cable TV, so please choose your words wisely and be reminded that you are on TV. With that, Dr. Persing, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bowman. This evening we have the pleasure of hearing from Dr. Tarosi. Dr. Tarosi is, as you know, a supervisor of the reading programs at North Penn, and she has a presentation for you both on the reading program and one aspect of the reading program, which is the reading recovery. And I understand she has Sue Durstein with her, and so perhaps the dynamic duo will get ready. So we'll turn it over to you.
Good evening. I'd like to thank you for inviting me to come before you this evening to speak on both the reading program and the reading recovery program. The last time I came before you, I spoke to you in 1992 about the comprehensive reading program, and in 1993 I presented the reading recovery program to you. In the interim and in between that, I also talked to you about the decoding program and the writing assessment results that we have gathered in the district. So my purpose tonight is really twofold. The first thing that I would like to do is to reacquaint you with some of the aspects of the reading program and to really identify 5 shifts that have taken place since we have last spoken about the reading program. The second thing I would like to do is to give you an overview of the reading recovery program, to bring you up to date on some of the data about its current status in North Penn, and also to make a recommendation to you for its future. Before I do that, I want to make note that there are a number of reading staff members in the audience tonight, and I want to recognize them and thank them. They are truly a very supportive and dedicated staff, and I am privileged to work with them, and I think I would be remiss not to make note of that. I also want to note that Susan Durstein, our teacher leader, is here, and she will be available to answer questions if you have a few, and I'm sure that you probably will. In your packet that you have tonight, there is an outline in the front, and that outline delineates those areas that I'm going to cover. It's quite a task to cover both the reading program and the reading recovery program and keep you with me and not asleep, so I will attempt to be succinct in my comments. The first aspect on the outline notes the philosophy, and I went back and I looked at the previous report that I had shared with you, and truly the goals of our program remain the same, and that is to develop students who read and write at a level commensurate with their abilities, who want to read and write, and also to prepare our children to be literate citizens of the 21st century. Over the past 6 years, what we have seen is an evolution of our reading program into what we are now calling the Balanced Literacy Program. And that is a very deliberate selection of a title in order to share the information that we are talking about reading, writing, speaking, and listening. We don't want to send the message that those are separate entities that need to function in isolation. We want to be very clear that we believe that all of these need to be integrated. Reading and writing are processes that support all of the content areas. And we are working very hard with our children in the elementary years so that they will be able to support all of the other content areas as they go along. We've chosen the word balanced because we believe it's very important to provide children with a balance of opportunities, to be aware that we need to be child-centered and have a balance of approaches when we're dealing with these children as well. And so the first shift that I note to you is the name of the title, which is now the Balanced Literacy Program. The second shift, and this is in your packet, is the identification of the strands of our curriculum. You will see that we have 5 strands that are noted, and under those strands, I have identified all of those areas that are covered within those strands. Briefly, the first one is transacting with text, which are all those opportunities that our children have to actually read text of various kinds. We have a basal program that we've had for a number of years, and one of the last times I spoke to you about the literature component, and that's well in place. But we have a much greater emphasis now on content area reading as well. Children and teachers both begin to emphasize and look at reading in social studies, looking at reading in science, and truly looking at reading and writing in mathematics as well, as that's equally important. The other areas are composing text. It's important that our children be writers. Extending reading and writing. We used to think of independent reading or take-home reading as an add-on. It is not that. It's an essential part of the curriculum, and we really encourage that because obviously the home connection with what we're doing is critically important. Investigating language, those areas of skills and strategies of decoding, vocabulary, grammar, and spelling are well in hand. And finally, the last one, which is called learning to learn, and there I have a term that's called metacognition. And what that really means is that we are encouraging and helping our students to learn to think about what they're doing so that when they run into a problem, rather than needing to look to someone else, they can begin to solve their problems themselves and therefore become independent learners. As we worked on these strands, the third shift that we have made, and this is not in your packet, is to identify a continuum of strategies and skills so that within each of the strands that you see here, every grade level has identified those skills and strategies for which the teacher is responsible to provide direct instruction to our students. We feel that it is extremely important that we lay out very clearly what our expectations are, and that in fact children need to be successful and be able to demonstrate their ability in these varying skills and strategies. And so we have done that this year, and that's proven to be very, very successful. There are a number of references to our continuum, and a number of our supportive programs also have been able to look at this continuum and really target those skills and strategies at each particular grade level for the children. The fourth shift that we have made in our program is that of the delivery format. Prior to last year, many of our schools had what was called the traditional 3-group reading model. As of last year, a decision was made that we were going to implement what's called the whole group, flexible group reading model. This was done for a number of reasons, and it was done after a rather intensive study in which we did several pilots in schools, in which we took 1 year to study grouping procedures, and in which a committee met to make the recommendation to move away from a fixed grouping policy to a much more flexible grouping policy. We did that for several reasons. One of them is that it's important not to lock our elementary children into a fixed group. It's really been proven, and the Nation of Readers has cited that the reading group that a child begins in is often that track that a child ends in at the end of high school. The other thing that we are doing is avoiding what's called assumptive teaching, and by that we mean sometimes an assumption is made that if we put a child into a particular reading group, that we are therefore meeting that child's needs because the child is in that reading group. And what we are saying now is the teacher needs to look very carefully at the child and determine what those needs are. Grouping is an essential, it's a critical part of our program, and we continue to group, but we do it on a flexible basis, and a child is not locked in as the bluebirds or the crows, whatever that may be. To help support the balanced literacy program, one of the initiatives that we have undertaken this year, well, we've completed this year, we really started it last year, is that of the reading enrichment. And we've spent 2 years studying the way that we can most effectively provide reading enrichment for our students. And really, you're hearing about this before the classroom teachers are, because we have not yet introduced that to them. But we are going to identify 3 different levels of reading enrichment that can be provided to students. One being that all students need to have reading enrichment, every single student. second level being those students whose needs are not met in the classroom, and the third level being those students who are identified as gifted in reading, who have very intensive and supportive reading enrichment. The other area that we have taken initiative in and looked at over the past 2 years is that of writing assessment. In the past, when I've spoken to you, I've spoken about the holistic writing assessment that has been used from an outside firm. And I have shared with you that we were intending to provide a writing assessment system within the elementary grades. And we took 2 years to look at that. And what we have developed is a twofold writing assessment system. One is what's called focus correction, which is what they're currently using at the secondary level. And we're going to move it down into the elementary level. And that is the opportunity for the classroom teacher to focus on very particular areas of writing, perhaps focusing on having a very strong beginning and focusing on capitalization. And then the next time the child might focus on spelling and using strong nouns or verbs. So we're going to have that, and we're also going to be looking at a holistic assessment, which means that the classroom teacher will be able to share with the parents a rating according to a rubric of where their child falls. And that rubric will be available because we're going to use the same rubric that the Pennsylvania State Assessment has used. So we're trying to align our instruction and our assessment with the assessment from the state as well. I want to make note to you that we continue to have our reading programs in the secondary level. At the middle school, we have really taken a strong initiative there also to align with the content areas. And within those classrooms and within those teams, our reading teachers are working to support the content areas as well. We also have this at the high school in what's called the Content Area Reading Team. And this is a group of high school teachers that volunteer to take part on this team and really study ways in which they can best support their students in reading and writing within their subject area. We've been doing this for 4 years, and we have some of the same teachers who have returned year after year because they have found this to be of value. We're also supporting those students in tech prep. We are providing them direct instruction and study skills that align with their tech prep courses as well. In addition to those initiatives, we continue to have our community and school connections. And I know many of you have heard about the Reading is Fundamental program. We just recently brought all of our thousands of first graders to the high school again for the Alice Takes North Penn to Storyland. And we had so many volunteers from the community and from teachers and principals to participate in this program. One of the pieces that was especially gratifying this year is that we had 2 representatives from Washington from the Reading is Fundamental program that journeyed up to North Penn to watch the play because they had heard that it was very successful, and they were very supportive of it when they saw it. This year again we've had our Young Authors Conference, and this year Kevin O'Malley was the speaker, and he is one of our North Penn graduates, so it was a pleasure to invite him back and have him speak, and this was done under the direction of Fran Kruzitz, the reading specialist at Englewood. You're aware that Dr. Marie Walsh and the North Penn Foundation brought Jim Trelease, a noted speaker on family reading, to North Penn within the last month. And you're also aware that the North Penn Foundation and Edie Amy, the reading specialist at Pembroke, brought Robin Moore, a noted author and storyteller. The other initiative that we continue to support and be part of is that of the Literacy Fair, which is a combination of the Reporter. It's a combination of Saturton Area School District and North Penn School District to promote literacy within the community. I will tell you, as I prepared this, I felt that in looking at self-evaluation, probably one of the areas that I believe I personally need to work on is making that connection with the parents a little stronger. I think that the schools do a wonderful job of that. I think that's something that I personally would like to work on to promote in the future. One of the last things I want to mention about the connection is just published by Pembroke Middle School, and I've suggested they send copies to you, which is a collaborative effort of the reading specialist and an English teacher to publish this really very fine literacy magazine, and I would encourage you to look at it. It's really well done. One of the ways that we can assess our program, obviously, is by looking at the assessment that we gather about this program. And in your packets, you will find assessment based upon the Stanford Achievement Test. This is one of the ways to gather data to gauge the effectiveness of our balanced literacy program. And what I've listed there for you or noted for you are the last 3 years of grades 2 to 10. And you'll see that we've elected a diagonal so that you can follow the progress of children in grade 2 to grade 3 and so on. What I look at trends. I look to see that we are continuing to make progress and that we remain strong. And I believe that this data shows that we are moving in a positive direction. The next page of this shows the language, the total language. And because my responsibility goes up to grade 6, I have included grades 2 through 6 and noting their progress from 92 to 93 to 94. It's interesting that while we continue to emphasize the integration of the language arts of reading and writing, the standardized testing program continues to isolate them. And that's one of the ways in which our curriculum is not lining up with this assessment. This is an important document, but I do not think that it is the only way of looking at our programs. The other piece that I have shared with you on the next page is what's called the Holt Silent Reading Inventory. This is another form of data that we can use to take a look at our program. And what I have cited here is January 1986 and then also spring 94-95. In the middle there are 2 grade levels from 93-94. I have asked all buildings to continue to use this assessment for 2 reasons. The first reason is to monitor where our students would fall if they were placed only in the basal program. And the second reason is to continue to monitor the program that we remain as strong, if not stronger, than we have been. And I think if you look at these data, you will see that the children that were tested, and all the children were tested in the spring of 94-95, we are making good progress and we are remaining in line with where we have been. What this tells you is where they would be placed if they would be placed in the basal only in the beginning of next year. So both of these methods we are using to collect some of the data about the success of our program. I want to make note for you that there are some future plans that we have for the Reading and Language Arts program. The first of these is the Reading, Language Arts, English Curriculum Review Committee. In 1977 was the very last time that this committee has been up and functioning in its totality to review the entire program. In 1986, we did the adoption of the Holt Basal system, but we have not done a review of the curriculum since then. We were to do that in 1990-91, but they changed the goal cycle to extend it. We were to do it this year, but with the complications we had this year, it was put on hold. So it is my fervent hope that we will be able to continue this next year and really do a thorough review of that committee. We're also going to continue to look at early intervention. We're going to continue to look at assessment, which is changing so rapidly, and we really do need to provide additional assessments for our students and for our parents and for our teachers. And finally, continue to look at the integration of all of the language arts into all of the content areas. The last area that I want to make note of, and this is the 5th shift that I would want to mention, is that of reading interventions. You see noted there the Chapter 1 on your outline, the reading support and the reading recovery program. What we are doing is trying to focus away from remediation, which said your child has fallen behind, we need to slow down what your child is doing, and say the child may be falling behind, but we can't afford to slow down. We need to provide every intervention that we can to support your child so they do not fall further behind. The classroom teacher is the first level of intervention. The second level of intervention is a short-term one, such as the Reading Recovery Program. And then the third level of intervention are those longer-term programs, such as Chapter 1 or special education. I want to turn to the Reading Recovery Program and talk to you about what is happening in terms of that. But before I do that, I just want to summarize that very quick trip through the Reading and Language Arts program to note that reading and writing are extremely complex tasks that we are asking our children in the earliest years of their career to really get a handle on. It is like unlike the other disciplines, and the other disciplines become more complex as we go through the grade levels. Reading and writing are at their most complex with our very youngest children. And so we take this with the utmost seriousness and the utmost responsibility in providing the very best opportunities for our children to be successful. One of the ways that we are working very hard is through the Reading Recovery Program. As I speak to you about the Reading Recovery Program, I want to be aware that both of us have two perspectives clearly in mind. The first perspective is that clear vision of those 1,000 first graders who are going to be entering our doors in the fall of next year, eager to learn, enthusiastic, and very confident that they will be successful learners. The second perspective is the clear recognition that we need to balance the best educational programs with fiscal responsibility. And so, as I speak to you tonight, I bear both of those in mind. I also bear in mind the fact that many of our children come with different levels of literacy. There are those children who come, we call them 2,000 book children, who've had at least 2,000 books read to them at home. We have children coming with 200 books, and unfortunately, we have children coming with perhaps 20 books that have been read to them. The ground is uneven to begin with. Reading Recovery is an early intervention program that is designed to help the first grade student who is at risk of failing to learn to read. It is the program that gets that child before he has experienced failure, and that is a critical element of this program, and that's why it is in first grade. It is designed to accelerate that student so that he or she can function at the average level of his classmates, so that he or she can be independent and be able to be successful in the classroom with no further interventions. It is a graduate level program. It is a program of intensive data collection, and it is also a program of continuing education. I have spoken many times, and I have said Reading Recovery is an intensive program, but it wasn't until this year that I really began to understand just how intensive Reading Recovery is. Within a 30-minute time frame, the teacher in a one-to-one situation covers all of the elements that you see in your program that says, "Hi, welcome to my Reading Recovery program." This is told from a child's perspective, but in a 30-minute time frame, that child comes in and does some fluent writing, practices writing those words that are essential for them to know. He or she rereads several familiar books. The teacher then takes what's called a running record, and that's an assessment, a daily assessment of how the child is doing in a book that was introduced the previous day. They then do some work with words or chunks of words or letters. The student then writes a story. That's generally 1 or 2 sentences. That story is then cut up, taken apart, put back together. A whole new book is introduced, and the student attempts that new book. All of those pieces take place within a 30-minute time frame. It is not something that there is a lot of downtime. If anything, they have a great deal of difficulty accomplishing it because it is so intensive. The teachers in training also have a very intensive course of study. They meet weekly at Bridle Path, in which Sue conducts what's called the Behind the Glass sessions. Every Reading Recovery teacher in training comes behind a two-way glass with a student and teaches that child while the rest of the Reading Recovery teachers watch, talk about what interventions would be most appropriate at that moment in time for that child. You are all invited to attend at any time. Many parents have come, many teachers have come, and as one Reading Recovery teacher said to me this year, well, this is kind of like boot camp. If you can make it through the Reading Recovery classes, you can make it through almost anything. Reading Recovery originated over 20 years ago in New Zealand by Dr. Maury Clay. He came to the United States in 1984 at Ohio State University. And in 1995, there are at least 49 of our states that have Reading Recovery, and we have 23 teacher leader training sites. We are one of 8 sites in Pennsylvania that is a Reading Recovery site, And Shippensburg University just this year became a training site for teacher leaders. It is projected that this year some 80,000 children will be in the program nationwide. I mentioned to you that the research data on this program is extremely strong, and I want to cite two particular areas. The first is a 5-year report that just came out from NYU, looking at their results from 1989 to 1994. The results are impressive. The average discontinuing rate, which is known as the success rate, was 85% of their students during that time period, ranging from 58% in year 1 up to 91% of the students discontinued in year 5. Those children were discontinued at a rate in which they were reading at or above the average of their first grade class. That's rather startling when you stop to think that these were the children who were identified as being among the lowest 20% by their classroom teachers. The second piece of research data that I would like to cite is the impact on the placement and referral for special education. Both New York University and Ohio State University have kept a great deal of data and documented the kinds of referrals and the amounts of referrals and placement into special education. At NYU, 4% of the reading recovery children were placed in special education compared to 11% of those children who were waiting to get into reading recovery. At Ohio State University, or within the state of Ohio, the entire state has cited that reading recovery is a pre-referral program to actual placement in a special education program. Their referral rate went down to 0.51%. That's an extremely low percent. Both of these I cite, and there is tremendous data that has been collected over the years to cite the impact that this program has on not only the child's progress in school, but also the special education placement. I'd like to turn now to the status of reading recovery in North Penn School District. It was in May of 1993 that the school board approved the reading recovery program and made a commitment to bring the district to full implementation. What that means is training staff members to serve the lowest 20% of our first grade population over the course of the next 4 years. What that meant was training 20 teachers to become reading recovery teachers. In year 1 of the program, which was last year, Susan Durstein went to New York and spent the entire year studying at New York University and teaching in Chinatown to language English as a second language, thank you, Sue, children. This year, which is called year 2, Susan has taught our first training class, which consists of 8 North Penn teachers, and I might congratulate them on their recent graduation, 2 teachers from Colonial School District and 2 teachers from Wissahickon School District. Both of those school districts are paying us to train their teachers, and with that, by accepting them, we have made the commitment to support them in implementing this program fully in their school district. This year, we have had 3 of our schools at full implementation, meaning we have provided the reading recovery staff that is necessary for the lowest 20%. Those schools have been Hatfield, Oak Park, and York Avenue. 5 additional schools have had partial implementation. As of now, the plan for next year is the following. We have 2 from Wissahickon again. We have 2 teachers from Colonial again. And at this point, we have 2 teachers from North Penn School District. There's 1 position that has been moved over from the middle school, which can be a reading recovery position, and 1 position that we can fund through Chapter 1. This means that rather than the 8 teachers that we had intended to train for the coming year, we currently have 2 on the docket. On the next page, I cite for you the year-end status to tell you where we currently are. And I need to tell you, I made a mistake. I missed 2 children. This says North Penn School District Reading Recovery Project projected year-end status. We are not yet finished collecting data, so we are giving you data as of last Friday, and we are giving you projected data as well. The success rate as of last Friday was that we have discontinued 63% of our reading recovery students. The projected status is that we will discontinue 69% of our reading recovery students. I want to point out to you that this discontinuing rate is with missing 4 weeks of classes during this school year. Our reading recovery teachers came every week for the training during the work stoppage, but they did not have the opportunity to work with children during that time. That had to have an impact on what we have found here. As we turn into planning for next year, I want to remind you of the proactive nature of reading recovery. Not only is it early intervention, but it is also cost and time effective. What I have attempted to do on the next page is to replicate what I presented when I presented the very first reading recovery proposal. What I've attempted to do is share it in $94, $95 figures, however. The first box represents the potential savings. If we look at the retention of a grade 1 student, the annual cost is $7,267. This figure I got from Mr. Kelly, and he helped me figure this one out. The second figure is that of Chapter 1, in which I took the Chapter 1 average salary, which they spend half of their time on Chapter 1, divided by the average number of students to come up with the annual cost of approximately $1,300 for the Chapter 1 student. They stay in the program for approximately 3 years at a cost of $3,900. The next is the Special Education Learning Support Program, and that figure was taken by finding the cost of special education and dividing that by the total number of special education students. The annual cost per student is $3,831. The average years in the program is 3, for a total cost per student of $11,493. The cost of the reading recovery student is approximately $2,600 per year. Taken at half of a year in which they spend within that program, you find that the cost is less and the time is less. The cost for the reading recovery student was taken by the average salary of a reading recovery teacher who spends half of her time in reading recovery, divided by 10 children, which is the average range of the children they can service in that year. The second piece of data says what this savings would be if we avoided 2 grade 1 retentions, if we avoided servicing 2 children in Chapter 1, and we avoided 1 special education placement, less the salary, the half a year salary. The net savings per teacher is in the area of $30,000. While we may not have accomplished all that this year, we certainly have accomplished some of those with many of the children whom we have served. And so it's important to note that it is a proactive program, both time and cost, as well as early intervention. What I would like to recommend to you is that we continue to implement reading recovery in the manner in which it was first adopted. Specifically, that would be 8 reading recovery teachers who would work half of their time in reading recovery. I am therefore requesting board approval for 3 new positions, which would become 6 of those reading recovery positions. I think it's important for you to be aware that if we have less than a full class of teachers in training, which is at least 8, we need to apply for special permission to conduct that class. Currently, we have 6 teachers. So if we need to apply for special permission to conduct that class, we may jeopardize the programs that Colonial and Wissahickon are counting on us to do. I have laid out the costs as they appeared for year 1, year 2, and what we project for year 3. All of the supplies, all of the teacher training from Shippensburg University, the teacher leader expenses, the technical assistance and site visitations from NYU, the salaries and benefits, less the reimbursement from Colonial and McGrafton. The projected cost for 3-year is laid out there for you to see. In conclusion, I would like to leave you with a few quotes. The first one that I would like to cite for you is that on May 23rd in the morning, ABC World News ran a piece on reading recovery. And it's stated in there, we're not allowed to get transcripts anymore of news reports, but they played it over the telephone for us. And it's stated in there that in America today, reading recovery is indeed a key to helping poor readers throughout the nation. This program has created miracles in districts. That is their word, that is not my word. One of our own first grade classroom teachers has said, as a first grade teacher of many years, I feel this program is the best program in helping children in need to develop reading skills as well as a love of reading. One of our own parents has written, my child started the program unable to read, and within 4 weeks he was reading on his own with such confidence. I have been approached by a number of parents who have asked me when this program would be coming to their school. I told them I did not have the answer. And so what I would like to leave you with is 2 questions. You've heard the questions before. If not these children, then which children? And if not now, when? Thank you. Sue and I will entertain questions that you may have.
Dr. Teresi,
Board question?
sure, I'm sorry, President Bowman. Carol, if I could direct you to the, I guess your financial sheet here. I'm looking at, by chance tonight, do you have a list of the books, material, and supplies? The breakdown on that, would you have that tonight, or can you provide me that later?
I can get that for you. The primary cost, though, I will tell you, is in books. Each reading recovery teacher has multiple copies at varying levels of books. And the children move through the levels, and the teacher needs to be very selective in picking out the book that would be most appropriate to match with that student. So the majority of this is spent on books.
Okay, and the ownership of the books, are they school districts or the teachers?
School districts.
Factored into the cost here, I see that 6 teachers would receive 6 credits,
Yes.
graduate level credits, I'm assuming.
8 teachers receive 6 credits.
Okay.
And year 3? Are you at year 2 or year 3?
Yes, year 3.
Yes. Okay, yes.
6 credits, and
Yes.
in the event that those 6 credits would take them up over in the pay scale, is that factored in here? That not only are we paying 8 teachers to 6 credits, but it may in fact lift them up in the already existing pay scales. Is that factored in here?
No, it is not. I can tell you that at least 3 of them are at the top of the pay scale currently.
Okay, so that leaves the potential of 5 being lifted into another category, another pay scale, and retroactivity and steps, etc. Okay. As you look at this total amount of money, we're looking over 2 mils for just reading recovery. And as I look at the reimbursement from Colonial and the fact that it's almost de minimis, why do they seem to have such a bargain in light of everything else we're paying for?
I factored out very carefully the costs for them, and it comes that they pay us $8,500 for this training. What we take out of that is that we pay the $2,500, then they can choose to pay that, and Colonial will pay that themselves next year. This is in light of many of the sites throughout the country and throughout Pennsylvania who have charged this amount to recoup some of those costs.
So that $8,500 in training includes training for how many of their people?
Each teacher.
Each teacher.
Each teacher, yes. And might I also note that with the training class in subsequent years, Sue can train up to 50 teachers. So we have not next year, but the following year, the potential of selling additional slots up to at least 8. And the following year, we have the potential of selling additional slots up to 8. One of the proposals that I had made originally was to recoup the cost of Susan's training at NYU, and covering what these districts have paid to us will in fact do that.
Okay. When you talked about the commitment that Colonial and Methacton is counting on, they're not counting on that. We don't have any sort of agreement with them,
We don't have a
written
legal
agreement, or
No, we do not.
Okay, so we are not contractually bound to these folks.
Not contractually.
Okay, Okay, I just want to make a note of something that you had said earlier on.
Okay.
Yes, in fact, this board did approve reading recovery in '93. Remember the night that that happened. I also remember that Dr. Elko at that time did not provide costs to go with the program that was accepted without the funds and the budget being attached to it. So that's the only part of that picture missing.
There were some costs, because I do have the actual proposal right here with me that was presented that
For the
night.
education, but not the impact that it would
Of the
have on
salary.
this
You are
district's budget.
correct.
And over the next so many years. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions on this side? Rob?
How much of the projected year 3 that's here is currently in the budget proposal as it's in front of us?
Good question.
How much in year 3 is currently in the budget? Is that what you're asking, Ralph?
Yes.
Hey, we're talking about year 2 for this budget. Like, year 3 would
Projected
be
for
90.
the third year,
I'm sorry,
95,
okay.
96.
The,
What we have in there is a 1.6 teachers, one which was taken from a chapter 1, which comes over to 0.6 from the secondary. So
actually,
there
yeah.
is-
Yeah, we have more than that. We have the current ones that are the half-time positions.
Yeah, but I mean, for new
And then
positions,
yeah.
new positions would be 1.6.
But if I look
That
down,
is
if
correct,
I look
Carol.
down this sheet, that includes,
They're new for reading recovery
But
only.
not within the district.
Correct.
So that's important to note. They're new for reading recovery, but not within the district. They're from internal.
understand. But when I talk about the cost here, and I guess I'll look past the salaries that are in there, but there are some other costs, books, materials, conference attendance, New York University technical assistant, site visitations. How much of those costs, other than the fact that, we're talking a fewer number of teachers going through the process, how much of the other costs associated with this are in the budget as it stands today?
The budget that I submitted included these costs.
I understand, but the budget that, as it was presented by the administration to us, how much of it's there?
It has everything but the salaries.
That was my understanding.
Correct.
That's the big part.
That's the
Well, except the new salaries, the additional salaries that were requested, the 3.5 teachers.
Right.
Give me a number, Dennis.
Yeah, the number.
Dollar number?
Subtract from the 481.
We were going at like, for $40,000 a teacher, I think I have it was like $160,000, but we had taken that out.
So this proposal reflects a request for another $160,000 over the proposed budget. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, but the one thing, I'm just a little confused about, in 94, 95, it says 0.5 it says 8 reading recovery teachers, and then in 95, 96, it goes to 7.5. That has me
Thank you.
confused
That
a little.
.5 will be funded through the Chapter 1 program.
Okay.
That's why that is not on there, because I had indicated that the Chapter 1 funding for this year can pay for that salary, that .5 of the salary.
So the $160,000 addition number is still good?
Yes.
That this request for 95, 96 reflects a request for an extra $160,000 not in the current preliminary budget. Am I understanding correctly?
Yes, you are.
Thank you.
The other thing I'm sure the board would want to spend some time on is what Carol has provided for you on the potential savings, which is there trying to keep the young children, especially in grade 1, out of special ed, is something that should be noted, because once our children get into the learning support class, and Judy would have to help me, it's very difficult to get them out. They do get out, but it's more difficult. The process of saving, not only the child, which is the most important thing, but the saving is obviously not to let the child get into the learning support.
Go ahead, Phil.
Go ahead, Bill.
You done? Is Ralph done?
Be done.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a question, and I don't, it's the title Hold Silent Reading Inventory page, if you would.
Thank you.
As I read downward grade level, I'm looking at the number of children below grade level in reading, and I'm seeing a constant and dramatic increase. Am I reading this correctly?
There is an increase, yes.
And we're
there is.
saying by the 5th grade, over 25% of our children are below grade level. And they,
On this one assessment,
and it's, well,
yes.
if it's consistent, it's an indication to me that there's a problem.
Yes, it is an indication, absolutely.
All right. Now, I'm not the reading specialist, but I see a problem. I look at what we talk about cost benefit, and I don't know how we cannot have the reading recovery program looking at what's going on here. And I said this at the public meeting last time, that I just believe so firmly in the need for elementary reading. And this really confirms to me that we have to do something. And if we have a budget and people are stuck on a number, I'd like us to find us taking money from something other than elementary reading. But the next question is, if this is an indication, what are we doing about this? If we're taking care of them in 1st grade, what's happening between 2nd grade and 5th grade? Is this something that should go on in 2nd grade and 3rd grade and 4th grade and 8th grade? And
We are providing intervention services in all of the elementary grades. The Chapter 1 program covers grades 1, 2, and 3. The building reading specialist picks up in 4, 5, and 6 and is responsible for providing intervention at those grade levels. What consistently happens, and I'm sure any of the reading specialists in the audience would confirm this, is the higher up you go in the grade level, the more difficult it is to intervene and bring that child back up to the level where he or she can function independently in the classroom. Those people who work at the high school, that's probably the most difficult time to provide reading intervention because it is so difficult.
well, we're losing children between, they get out of 1st grade, and we have this 8% number. Why is it increasing dramatically?
I would, first of all, want to note that this is representative of one aspect of the reading program, and I would not want to put all of the focus on that. However, I also believe that it becomes much more difficult for children as they're going along, and once they have experienced a lack of success, they are not really inclined to put their best foot forward as well. So not only are they experiencing difficulty and sometimes failure in reading, but they also are losing the motivation to really move forward.
Well, if they can't read, they can't do any other
And
course
their
we
other
offer, can
subject
they?
areas will suffer. That's one of the things that I tried to make before, that we have to get these kids early because we need to use the reading and the writing process to support every other content area, every other discipline that they're studying. If they're having difficulty in reading in the basal, they're going to have difficulty in social studies and science as well.
Okay, my next question is part of, and I'm looking at the strands of the reading language arts curriculum. Part of the reading help that we're getting is from the home environment. And we know that not all homes are giving the same support. Isn't that building in failure automatically with some of this?
I would never say that there's an automatic failure. I'm not willing to say that, nor would I. However, the home is an integral part of this, and we just had a Chapter 1 parent meeting last night, and one of the messages that we reiterate every single time is that the parent is the child's first teacher. And so the parent is an integral piece of this. And when I said to you before that in being a self-evaluator and looking at one of the things that I believe I need to do is to make a greater emphasis to reach out into the home and to help. And one thing I did not mention is that we have been awarded for Reading Recovery a technical assistance grant for next year to develop a parent center with reading materials. So that is one of the pieces that we can begin to do.
Okay. On the reading recovery page, I guess we call it the budget page. I wrote a note that we only have 2 teachers in training. Is that this year?
Right now, we have only 2 teachers planned for next year in training.
Is that a budget decision, or is that a lack of volunteers decision?
No, we have over 40 applicants who would be interested in that position, those positions.
Okay. And all this is done by current teachers? This
Up
is
to this point, it has all been done by current teachers, and everybody who has applied up to this time is either working in the school district as a current teacher, or we have some aides who have applied and expressed interest in moving into this position.
But this is a position that is a full-time position, correct?
Half-time.
Half-time.
0.5. They spend half of their day working with 4 children. You must be a certified teacher. You do not need to be a reading specialist in order to be a reading recovery teacher.
Okay, but these teachers are not at the same time classroom teachers?
No.
Okay.
No. There's one classroom teacher who applied for next year who is going on maternity leave and would like to spend half of her time working.
But then she has to be replaced in the classroom?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm done, thank you.
I have a question.
David, Vicki?
Yes. How do the reading specialists fit into the reading recovery program within their own buildings?
Do you want to answer a question?
Okay. It's a collaborative effort in terms of that initial thrust where we need to assess children. The reading specialist has some information about the children in kindergarten and helps us know which children to begin working with and taking a look at. The reading specialist in the building is very interested in the progress of the children, because as the children are reaching average levels, the reading specialist then becomes the one who is sort of going to take over the monitoring of their progress through the rest of that school year. You know, as reading recovery teachers, we do our level, but the reading specialist has to know that that child really has been successful and is continuing to be successful. So it's consultation and collaboration in monitoring their progress.
And it's the reading specialists that are helping to identify kindergarten children for potential interventions in first grade?
Right, because they work more with the kindergarten teachers and know the nature of the classes. So they help explain to the kindergarten teachers what we're looking for, and then they also work with the first grade teachers and staff
And
development.
when does the identification begin?
It begins the very end of the school year, when we have information for setting up classes for next year. The kindergarten teachers do an assessment.
Should I assume right now that the identification of children for intervention next year is only being done in those schools where there's reading recovery?
Now, there
I mean,
are.
it's especially for reading recovery program in that schools where it exists, but are they trying to assess how many children they could be helping if there were reading recovery teachers in every one of the elementary schools?
Well, since we have an intervention program in every building in terms of either Title I or reading support or reading recovery, we're looking at every building for any of the children who are at risk.
Would you hazard a guess how many children would benefit from reading recovery based on the other interventions that we provide in other schools? How many children are we trying to intervene with for September of next year? I understand. It's an estimation. I'm just trying to understand. If we had reading recovery available in every building, how many children would we be helping?
Okay, that would be a minimum of 10 times 13, 130 at a minimum. Hopefully we would be able to work with 12. Now, in a training year, we don't always work with 10 children because it takes us longer getting going when we're trying to work out the program. So many of our teachers this year only worked with 5 to 8, but with the year of training underway, they'll be working with 10 to 12 children during the year.
I understand, but just so you'll understand where I'm coming from, how many children typically out of the first grade population are going to need some sort of intervention, which tells me that if we fully implement this program, how many children would benefit from this program? I mean, do we have numbers that go back 2, 3, 4, 5 years that tell us how many children we could have been helping or could help in the future?
I can share with you as soon as I find it exactly the number of children that we currently are servicing in Chapter 1 in first grade as well. And I don't want to hazard a guess on that. I have this data here. I would say at least 3 times 13, so we have at least 50 children who we are currently helping. That is minus the 80 in reading recovery. Those are Chapter 1 only. So we are only able to focus on a very small number of the children in first grade through our Chapter 1 reading support program.
And I think I'm going to add, the number that we're serving is less than the number that classroom teachers would recommend.
All right.
When we're asking classroom teachers to recommend children they think are at risk, in most buildings we're looking at, the minimum last year was 8%, and the maximum was more than 20% in a building of children they felt needed assistance.
From what you're saying, could you assume that if we had reading recovery trained teachers in all first grades, that there would be perhaps the population would be higher? They would stop looking at those at the highest risk and start looking at those at a more moderate risk? Would that kind of thing occur? With the kind of training that they would receive?
At full implementation, if we were to take reading recovery to full implementation within North Penn, what that would mean would be approximately 20 teachers working with 10 students at 200. That's working with the lowest 20%.
Okay.
And when we look at those children, we take the number of children who are in an average classroom and estimate what number 20% would be. So that, unless you have over the implementation of 20%, the chances of it going beyond that 20% are very slim, because they're really, to get that 20%, those 200 children, it's a very focused kind of effort working with 10 children for each teacher. There are districts that have gone above the 20% throughout the United States, but those are districts that for some reason or another have beyond the required number of reading recovery teachers.
All right. One request and another question. If you would repeat again, please, you were talking about the study that was done by NYU that talked about the percentages of children that came out of their reading recovery program. Was it over the course of 5 grades?
The data that they cited was over the course of 5 years.
Okay.
And what they cited was that the impact by the last year of reading recovery on special education was that 4% of the reading recovery population was placed in special education versus the 11% of children who were waiting to get into reading recovery.
Okay, and the other aspect was the number of children that successfully completed and were discontinued.
I did not write down the number, although I can get it for you.
I thought you'd given percentages
the
that were in the...
percentage was 85%.
Okay.
That was the average, ranging from a low of 58% in the first year of the program to a high of 91% discontinuing in year 5.
Those were the numbers.
Okay.
Is it possible to get a reprint of that article?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
If I can clarify an answer you just gave. When you say...
Great.
I asked for clarification.
Oh, you're asking, but I thought you were going to clarify.
No, I can't clarify it.
Good job.
When you talk through year 5, you're talking 5 first grades, not the same children going through grades 1 through 5. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm talking about the 5th year of the program with first
Okay,
graders.
thank you.
Okay. I think some of it was clarified, if I understand. This is in addition to our reading specialists,
Yes.
okay? We do have reading specialists located in each elementary school
Yes.
building? Okay. As I understand these figures, we really only have a couple of grades on the sheet where you have your whole silent reading inventory that Bill was looking at. I only really see 2 grades that show, a consecutive class following through, right? Grade 1 going to in 93, 94, and grade 2 moving to grade 3. But does this reflect, this is our general student population?
Yes,
Karen?
this is the population who is mainstream for reading and receives reading instruction. And
Okay.
might I say that I do have data from grade 3, 4, 5, and 6. However, I did not put it down because it was not representative of all the buildings, and I thought that would be more confusing to share incomplete data.
Okay. Now, you have given some of the schools where it was mainly focused at Hatfield, Oak Park, and York Avenue, is that correct? Did I get those right? You mentioned a pilot school where it began. Where was that? The first year? You said that it was introduced as a pilot program?
Reading recovery.
I thought you said that at the
This
very
is the first year of reading recovery in any of our schools, and
Oh, okay, not even an isolated classroom pilot program?
no, I
Okay.
mentioned a pilot program in terms of the regular classroom reading program and,
Okay.
and looking at a different organizational format. The other schools in which reading recovery has partial implementation are North Wales, Walton Farm, Englewood, Knapp, and Bridle Path. And Bridle Path is the training site for Susan.
Okay. Going to the page where you have your projected year-end status with listing the number of students.
Yes.
So you say total number served is 86, but that includes students who may have only been seen once. Is
That's
that
correct. And actually,
That's
that's,
88.
it should be 88 and 100. I lost 2 children to my horror when I went over this tonight. It's 88 and 100 under total served.
Okay, but many of those are just single visits. Now,
Well-
those that stay in the program that are classified as the number of program children that's receiving the 60 lessons or more, there were 51, and then it says discontinued 32. So what happens, the balance of those children, when you say discontinued, you mean discontinued within a year? Because you have an average time, it says here of half a year is what the average period of time is for a student.
When you look at the results across the whole year, the time in the program then is averaged. So on average, children are spending about a half a year in the program. That's why we talk about acceleration. So, we have 51 children who have 60 or more lessons. There are 32 who are discontinued, which means they are successfully working at grade level. And they've been able to leave the program as successful children. There are some children who are in the program more than 60 lessons who have not reached grade level averages by the end of the year. They've all made considerable progress, but they have not gotten to perform like the average first grader.
Okay, so for program children, we're expecting for the upcoming year it to move from 51 to 58, and also total numbers going from 88 to 100. So even in those part-time students or those that are just there for, I guess, a short-term assistance, you expect to see 12 additional?
We have 3 weeks left in the program, and as soon as a child discontinues, another one is identified to go in his place. And so we are constantly adding new children so that even if it's only a few weeks, an opportunity to get that child started. So between now and June 22nd, when the data needs to go in about these programs, we will continue to add children, and we project that there will be some shifts and discontinuity.
But that's basically a replacement of one that's exited.
correct.
It's not, it may be new numbers, but as far as
It's
time,
always 4.
hours, the amount of hours that, say the teacher is providing an instructional time. I don't know if I missed that in here somewhere. I see on the next page, reading recovery, $2,600 per student, and that is an average based on those, including all the numbers of those that are there temporarily. I mean, what did you divide in there? As, when you're figuring out your program cost, not the teacher, I know you did the $26,000 is the salary of the employee or the cost of the
The
employee?
average salary of a half-time employee.
For the half-time.
Right, 0.5.
And they are basically seeing 5 students at a time on an average of a half a year.
Over the course of the year, a reading recovery teacher generally serves between 8 to 12. I therefore selected the figure of 10 and divided the 26,000 by 10, figuring that was a reasonable average to come up with the 2,600. Let me repeat that the teacher works with 4 students one-on-one over the course of a half of a day. So, yes, as a child discontinues, another one replaces, but you don't go beyond that half of a day with reading recovery. It is strictly half a day.
But basically, so it is that one employee, or for whatever they're prorated, that is for 8 to 10 students at $26,000.
8 to 12 students, that's correct. That's
In a
right.
year. As I was looking through, I noticed those 12 students difference, which some of those are single sessions or part-time sessions. Full-time programs, I'm seeing a difference of 7 additional students that you would anticipate receiving the full program of 60 students. As I move to the budget, I have to have concerns, because with those small numbers, you're still talking going from a $298,674 budget, or, well, our cost $274,674, up to $481,924. That's at a 40% increase in costs.
But then we're looking at next year being able to serve double these numbers.
But-
Because that's would be adding an equal number of new positions in reading recovery. So actually, our trained people would be working with more students next year, plus the backup number with the teachers in training. So next year, we'd be looking at serving 120 students as program students, or a total of 200 students across the whole year.
Well, when you answer to David's question regarding the number of children that could be served if we were to have it fully implemented, and you talked about just taking the 10 times the number of employees, it collided with what I thought the program was for special needs services, which means that it wouldn't be a matter of how many they could take, it would be how many would be justified in being in such a special program. I mean, I could tell you my daughter's a good reader, but she's certainly going to benefit from being taught with only 4 or 5 students at a price of $26,000 a year. That will be a benefit to any single child that we would have in this school district, I think would show reading improvement if they were able to get such specialized treatment. So I don't know how we determine just how many of our students are being utilized and served through our reading specialists, which average at about $50,000 a year, versus the reading recovery. And do we have any data to show that the students that are being served through reading recovery aren't still special needs students? I mean, certainly many of the special needs students have much greater needs beyond reading, and I'm finding some of it a little hard to assume that yes, we maybe if a special needs child if their only problem is reading, you may be able to keep them from the program. But if they have many of the other diverse academic needs and emotional needs and social needs of a special ed child, are they still entered in? Do you serve special needs students that are also in special ed programs?
No, once they've been identified for a special ed program, they're not part of reading recovery. Part of the reason is, for reading recovery, they need to be having a classroom reading program in addition to reading recovery. So if they're in a special ed program and they're not mainstreamed for reading, they cannot be part of reading recovery. They're already at that 3rd level of intervention.
Okay, so first level is the classroom, second level is the reading specialist,
The reading recovery program.
and the second is reading recovery above the
It's a
reading
short-term
specialist?
intervention. I think I would like to clarify something. I think we may be saying the same thing, but I don't want to take the chance that we're not. The reading recovery teacher does not work with a small group of 5 children. She works with 1 child at a time. So when you talk in terms of the numbers, we need to bear in mind that it is a one-on-one intervention type of program.
I'm glad you did clarify that. I thought it was working with 5 for X number of hours.
I thought that
Well, then
was what I heard. And
it's
I just
even more
wanted to-
specialized.
I think the other piece, though, that we need to bear in mind in terms of learning disabilities is that it's extremely difficult to diagnose the difference between a true organic disability and a true reading disability. That many children who really have reading disabilities may be classified as learning disabled. Given the opportunity to have the intervention of reading recovery, that provides such data so that when a child is identified as learning disabled, a child truly has all of those other elements that you are talking about that really classify them as a learning disabled child.
How many hours, Carol, if I could make one point, I think Carol said this earlier on, if you look at reading recovery as a pre-referral, if special ed works the way it's supposed to, you're going to exhaust everything you have in regular education to make sure that child is truly a handicapped child. And that's what reading recovery does in terms of trying to weed out some of those garden variety reading problems that really are not of a special education nature. And this program is set up to do that. And the pre-referral is really an important aspect of this program.
I guess my only other question would be, with the year of 95, 96, going up to the $481,924, and you would estimate that would serve how many more students would that accommodate then?
16, 17 times 10, approximately 170 students, 17 teachers times the average of 10.
17.
Yes, you are.
A lot of questions. I'm sorry.
Everyone's getting
Who's
impatient
next?
here.
Hurry up.
Carol, do you have anything that shows us exactly where the reading recovery is as far as grade level availability?
It is only available in first grade. Is that
Only for
only
first?
first grade? The reason being, once a child is into second grade, they have already learned some of those unproductive reading strategies, and it's really very difficult. We continue to use those strategies with our reading staff and the children, but the one-on-one is in first grade.
And once the children have developed bad habits, you can't consider it a short-term intervention. So when children have had an opportunity for kindergarten and first grade without reading recovery or without a specialized intervention, then you can't think of in terms of short-term.
What is the average number of hours a student stays in reading recovery? The actual instructional hours with the reading recovery specialist. Is that the 40 that's there
It would be
per,
40.
for an average of the students?
Yeah, 40 instructional hours with the student.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
How about some not-so-technical questions? What year did we start having reading in the 7th grade, in addition to English? What year did that start?
I came to this district in 1989, and it was in place then.
Okay. Does anybody know when that started?
I do not know how much prior to that 7th grade has been.
Tom, I would guess it began in 1980 when we went to the middle school concept.
Okay, because I need to say, I have had parents come to me that say that they feel that the reading program for their particular child in the 7th grade is a waste of time for their child, that their child can handle plenty of reading in their English program. And I'm sure I'll get that question if I would support something like this now. Would we as a board be willing to pull that program and put more money into this program, which you're proposing here, due to the fact that there are quite a few children in the 7th grade that particularly don't need reading in addition to English? Have we discussed that at all? That's my first question.
We have not discussed that, and I would like to add, I really am disappointed if parents feel that that program is a waste, that I have never heard that. I
So
would
they
think
should
that
talk to you.
I would
Okay.
certainly want them to talk to me. I think that's real important.
Okay.
Have to be allowed, that's right.
Okay, that's fair enough.
That's fair.
And the second question I have is, you did cite some statistics about children that have been, their parents have read so many books to them, and other parents, it's a very small amount. When did that start happening? And it sounds to me like there obviously has been a trend. 10 years ago, we didn't see this problem. We see this problem today. Do you feel that statistics show now that that we have to spend this money as a result of parents not doing their job, reading to their children at a young age? Is that why we have to implement this program?
I would never say that it's because parents don't do their job. I think we are all responsible. Certainly, we in the educational system are accountable for teaching our children to read, and I take that responsibility very personally. We know, however, that we are very busy in our homes and that we do have less time as families, and one of the things that we don't get to do as much of is read. We also know that children spend hours in front of the television, hours at Nintendo, which is a very fast-paced, quickly reactive kind of activity, not at all the kind of sustained, silent activity that reading can be and is. So the kinds of behaviors we see children doing right now in terms of their activity is very different than what it was a number of years ago when they didn't spend 6 hours a day in front of the television. So
it's unfortunate to the senior citizens who have to pay for this due to the fact that so many kids are playing Nintendo and other type games and not being read to by their parents, that they'll have to help foot the bill for this program.
well, yes, it is. And if I had some alternative to that particular piece, I hear what you're saying, but I do think that there are many ways that children have changed, and I want to be real clear, though, in saying I am not holding the parents responsible. I think we are co-partners in this together.
And I think if we go back and look at the research from Maureen Clay, her research goes back almost 30 years ago, indicating that about 20% of a first grade group is going to have some difficulty getting started successfully in reading, and that's going back 30 years. I think an important thing to consider is how the nature of literacy changes from preschool years to first grade. In preschool years, we really aren't expecting children to look at those black and white marks on the page and learn to figure out what they need. But during that kindergarten year and at the end of kindergarten and the beginning of first grade, we certainly want those children to know what to do with those black marks on paper. Some children don't make that switch from all the listening and talking and enjoyment of books and signs to their being able to deal with that printed form. And that's part of what this program is about, to help those children who enjoy literature, understand what stories are all about, but haven't gotten focused onto figuring out the code in a meaningful way. So, I mean, we can go back 30 years and look at 20% of the children at need. And in a society quite different from ours, too.
Okay.
Dr.
You're done, Tom? Jerry?
In our, when you first brought this up, we talked about taking, or not taking it out, but stopping it where it was. You said that we wanted to stop and take a look at what we had before we poured more money into it. If the first grade is such a critical year, and I believe that is where we need to teach them to read, and then they'll be more off on their own, wouldn't it be better to stop at the 7th grade, the reading, remedial reading, and put the money into this?
Let's ask that question in a different way. Without trying to get into non sequiturs or syllogistic reasoning, I'd like to state that philosophically, I have always been a proponent of taking any programs that have to do with language, including foreign language teaching, and place it at the earliest possible age. If I had my druthers, and I know I'll get criticized for this, but I've been criticized before. But I really believe that it would behoove the school district to do a critical examination in 95, 96 to take a look at the reading program totally and see if reading recovery, as we support it, and is very important in the 1st and 2nd grade, if the resources are available in other positions, would those resources be better utilized at in a younger position? And I would think that's something that we should study. I know it's always easy for me to sit here and say what you should do, next year, but nonetheless, it's something that Carol and I have talked about, and I'm quite sure she knows my feelings on it, and it's something that I really believe it should take place. I firmly believe that reading and writing should be taught at the various earliest ages, at age 2, as a matter of fact. And that's part of the problem that Mr. Clemens alluded to, and it's part that was supported by Carol and by Susan. We have a cultural problem, but nonetheless, if we're going to put our resources in, I just think for any language program, we're better off, for better results, to put it in as early as possible.
Well, Dr. Persing, do we have any assessments of what the total cost, the total resources that are thrown into teaching reading at the grade levels? I mean, considering we've got all these different layers of we have our teacher time, our classroom teacher time, and we have our reading specialist, and we have...
You can do an analysis of it. That isn't the difficult piece. The piece that's difficult, and that's what Dr. Tarosi, as your specialist, has to guide you through this, is that how do you take the resources that you have and utilize them the best way possible to get the best event for the child. And keep in mind, it's the kids that's important. That's the important thing we've got to consider. And that's why if you have a program like Reading Recovery, and it demonstrates that you're going to save in the long run, it's something to look at. If you don't have the full resources, then you ought to look to see where you can possibly get them to benefit the children at the early stage.
I think that the statistics that Mr. Allen was alluding to show why we really need reading in the 7th grade too. There's the trend of the kids going from grade level in 1st grade down to 6th grade is a declining trend. That's going the wrong way. We should be at least holding it. And obviously the 1st graders aren't a group of much smarter kids than the kids now in 6th grade. But they're not holding their own in terms of reading on grade level, and that's a very disconcerting set of figures right there on the right chart. What aren't we doing right that's causing this to happen? I think internally within our district we need to look at that very closely, and as Tom said, examine why this trend is happening. I think the Reading Recovery is great for that very small group of kids that we can hopefully save in the 1st grade, but there's obviously some kids just over them that are making the grade level in grade 1 that are struggling from then on, and it's getting worse and worse instead of better, and that's what, of all the statistics and things that you have here, is very disconcerting to me, and I think we need to look at that very closely.
But Mr. Bowman, and I hope Carol will support this, or if she doesn't, tell me I'm wrong, because she's the expert. But at least with my limited amount of research into language instruction and learning how to read and learning how to write, we find that this is an anomaly. This is not an anomaly solely that's present in North Penn. Unfortunately, it's a trend throughout the United States that the longer we go on, the farther behind the kids get in this particular type of language development. Is that basically true? I mean, it's not peculiar just to North Bend.
No, I would concur with that. I might also note the Stanford achievement results in reading in grade 8. If you look at grade 8, you will note that the children this year in grade 8 have made progress. So it is very difficult as children get older to intervene and correct those reading difficulties, and for many reasons, it does usually get progressively worse. However, we're working very, very hard to intervene with those children. One of the hopes with Reading Recovery is that those children will never be seen again in any intervention program and will continue to function at the average level, and that data is consistent up until 4th grade. After 4th grade, there are many other factors that come into the statistics, so it's real difficult to point only to Reading Recovery by the time a child gets to 4th grade. However, it is our hope, and looking at the data that has been supported up till now with reading recovery, that this kind of figure with those children who have gone through reading recovery will not continue. We will always have children coming in afterwards in second grade or in third grade who have never had the opportunity because they've moved in at other points to go through reading recovery.
I have a couple other, are you done, Terry? I'm sorry. Okay, I had some questions, and I was a little concerned about what we're charging Colonial and Methacton. But in working the numbers, it looks like to me it costs us about $96,000 to do that, subtracting out salaries and benefits, which they pay their teachers correctly.
That's correct.
So divided by 12, if there's 12 in that program, that comes out to about $8K, which I assume they pay their own materials for their teachers, the $2,500.
Either they, Colonial is paying its own, Wissahickon is sending us that money, and we are doing the ordering for them. But we do not pay for them out of North Penn. They pay for that.
And that's separate from the reimbursement of the $24,000.
Yes, I've taken
Okay.
that out.
Okay, so that's where you get your $8,500 per teacher that they reimburse us. Okay, so that solves that problem.
May I say something about the amount of money from Colonial and Wissahickon? There are a number of districts that have formed what's called a consortium. And the consortium means that there is equal buy-in from all partners, so that there would be equal buy-in from Colonial, Wissahickon, and North Penn. When we proposed this in 1993, we proposed it independently, and that's how it was passed, and that's how we have gone forward. So we have become what's known as a marketing site for reading recovery, in which we sell slots. It's different than those school districts that have formed a consortium
Understood.
for reading recovery.
It seems like we're recouping the right amount of cost. Obviously, there's a cost of the district for our teachers that's over and above that's important. Just some, when you gave your presentation, I had some, we looked at the lowest 20% in the first grade. And to me, that's, of 1,000 kids in a class, that's about 200 children you look at for potentially. Now, do you evaluate them at the beginning of first grade, or as the first grade is going through, or how's that work?
We identify the lowest 20% first 2-3 weeks of school.
Okay.
And then for reading recovery purposes, we select the lowest achieving 4.
Okay.
Out of that 20%. And then we have a wait list. The children who make up the difference between the 4 we start with and the rest of the 20% in that building. And then at the end of the year, they're also reassessed. Even those children who discontinue are reassessed at the end of the year, because when we make the right decisions, if they leave the program in January successfully, they are going to score higher in the testing in June than they did in January, because they're going to continue to be able to learn like the average student in their classroom. And that's what we're finding out to be true. We're right in the middle of our end of the year assessment. And some of the reading recovery teachers are surprised at the gains.
Now you use the term average in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mean, are you using that synonymous with expected level for that grade? To me, average is different than what you expect a first grader to read at or above than what's the average in the class. There's a difference there?
Right now, it's a compromise, because we are asking classroom teachers, what's average in your classroom? We're also looking at average first grade. So in some cases, the child needs to be stronger than just average by first grade standards.
But my concern is, now, are we helping a child that it may be in a class with 20 really, really good readers, and now we're gonna put them in reading recovery, even though they're better than 15 kids or 20 kids in another grade? And that's my concern. Are we really identifying and if you look back to my favorite chart here that shows us going from 96 to 67, the 4% that are reading at below grade level in the spring, have we identified, hopefully, that, the kids that were in that 4% to start the program, rather than have them show up at the end of the spring, and not take kids that would have been at grade level by the end anyway?
No, we start with the lowest.
Okay.
I mean, that's, reading recovery is registered, And one of the guidelines is you start with the neediest children.
Okay, good. That's what I was trying to get to, because it wasn't sounding to me like that's what we were doing by taking the lowest 20%. Now, just so I understand it, these teachers are half-time, so they only deal with the kids either in the morning or in the afternoon. What do they do, if they're not our classroom teachers, what are they doing? What's their job?
This year, the group of teachers who were trained for reading recovery were the Chapter 1 teachers. So the other half of the day, they provided Chapter 1 services.
Okay.
In the future, they could be kindergarten teachers who spend half a day teaching kindergarten and the other half doing reading recovery.
Okay.
They could become teachers who are employed for only half-time, and the other half of the time, they could do the ESL support that many of them have
Okay.
applied for.
That's great. So we have some options there to move people
Yes.
around. And the idea here is because of the intense working one-on-one, it's not good to do that 7.5 hours a day. Okay, that's what I assume. Now, you said that the statistics came out of NYU that from 89 to 94, they had an average of 85% graduation rate, so to speak.
Yes.
And that started out the first year at 58 and moved to 91. Is that because the teachers got better at the techniques and things like that? Were these the same teachers that worked with the kids
The
through
program
that time?
expanded every year, so every year additional teachers were trained. So the crew that started out the very first year, every year it was added to, so additional teachers were put in. Some of the teachers got better that were in that very first year, and Sue has often talked about the first year is the most difficult to get it up and running and get it all together. But some of the teachers in year 5 were very first-year teachers as well.
I understand that, but the adding numbers doesn't make the percent go up. You have to, it's still on the number of kids that start and end, regardless of what that, now, and since we expect to be around 69-70% by the end of the year, that would indicate that hopefully our 8 trained teachers will continue on this and increase that probability, and that the new ones can hopefully add to that. Now, we said that there's some children that enter the program at the end of the year, and they've been identified this late in the season, so to speak, and that's they may have been identified earlier, we just don't get to them, is that right?
Exactly.
Okay. Now, given that they don't start right at the beginning of second grade to intervene with some of the kids, is it possible that the staff that we have on at the beginning of the year can work with the kids they just ended with the last year until basically the new first graders come in and get identified and things like that?
If we had the resources, we could do that. But the beginning of the year is beginning that assessment to identify the new first graders. And that does take up that half day, and we want to start with those first graders as soon as possible.
I understand that, but the reading recovery teachers then work with the reading specialists to identify, and the classroom teachers to identify, hopefully immediately, who the 4 or 5 kids are in each grade that we need to work in each school.
Right.
Okay.
And when the Chapter 1 teachers pick up those children in second grade, they use many of the reading recovery strategies with the small group of students. So we are attempting to carry those strategies over into second grade.
From one-on-one to
Exactly.
one to small groups.
Exactly.
And I assume that since we have about 60 sessions, and it's a total of 40 hours, it's about a 40-minute session each time that the teacher works individually with each student?
It unfortunately ends up to be 40 minutes because of some extra time, and we're not always as sharp as we need to be, or we overteach. It's supposed to be 30 minutes of instruction. The 40 hours listed there is assuming that it would be more than 60 sessions, because the first group of children usually take more than 60 lessons to accelerate the
Because they're the most
average.
needy, and then as you, okay, I
Right.
understand. Okay, great, well, thank you. Other questions? Don?
You shouldn't be giving graphs or charts.
What? Hey, I'm a numbers person, you know?
He should
Give me
not be allowed
numbers.
to have graphs and charts. Okay, ladies, back to the hold silent reading inventory sheet. I heard you mention that you're hoping, or your wish is to serve 170 students for next year, and I also heard you say you try and ascertain about 20% of the lowest scoring students, a class of 1,000 being 200. But as we look here in the results that you have provided, spring 94-95, below grade level is 4%. I hear your desire to provide real critical care in reading academics, but I don't see an epidemic here. I just don't see the epidemic.
I think one of the things that we need to be cautious of in looking at this data is that it is one piece of a number of ways of looking at children.
Okay.
The child who takes the whole placement inventory reads a small passage,
Right.
fills out some multiple choice in which they fill in a little circle indicating or put a circle around whatever the right answer is, as opposed to real, authentic reading tasks of reading books constantly. There's a big difference in those two tasks that we are asking children to do. This 4% represents children who would be reading at level 8 at the end of first grade. They need to be ready to go into level 9 at the beginning of second grade. So there is a span that they're going to have to also pick up to get to that level 9.
We're also looking at end of first grade results, not beginning of first grade.
Okay, so if we backed up the same children into 93, 94, you're still at that 4%.
No, that's still.
That's still spring, it's
That's
still end of year.
first grade.
Yeah, but there wasn't.
But then they'd be coming in that fall. I'm giving them another year then, in the
Right.
event. Okay, I'm just backing up a year. How does T1 factor into this? When I look at the relatively containable costs of providing 18 students with T1, which not only addresses reading difficulties, but also math and this and that and everything else, it's a more, God, I hate to use the word holistic, but I mean it's a more complete remediation package. 18 kids with one teacher, as opposed to one. Would we not be best using our monies to put forth more T1 classes with an emphasis on reading for those kids that are with your folks?
I do not have any data, nor do I know if it exists, of those T1 children and their success rate in reading. I do not know what that is at this point in time. I have not.
But that's a remediation picture that has not been presented here as you go.
That's correct.
I mean, that's another plan that has not been provided here to me.
But it is going to add that additional extra year of school, because T1 is an extra year. So if you look at the cost of a year of retention.
But you're also looking at one teacher providing for 18 as opposed to one of you for one.
One
Well-
teacher providing for 12 versus one teacher providing for 18. A reading recovery teacher goes between 8 to 12 students over the course of the year, whereas the T1 teacher
Has 18 all year long.
has 18 all year, which is an extra year in school for those children.
Plus for the reading recovery teacher, that's half a day with the 8 to 12. Her other half of the day, she's working with many more children.
The cost comparisons would be interesting. That's it for me.
Any other questions from the board? Okay.
Dick, sorry, one more.
Sure.
If we follow through with Dr. Persing's recommendation that we evaluate the entire reading program, with the eventual goal to perhaps reduce the types of intervention we'd have to do in later years, what type of assessment tools would you choose to help us understand how effective our earliest intervention programs were working? We talked about the whole program as only a portion, and we have the Stanford Achievement Tests. Is that another portion, or is that complete? What would we do to prove the worth of our intervention programs?
In Chapter 1, we do use additional assessment pieces, and the pieces of assessment that we are currently using in Chapter 1, what's called a running record, in which a student is asked to read a piece of text and get an accuracy level. And certainly with elementary school children, that's a very appropriate assessment. One of the other pieces would need to be a kind of comprehension piece, such as a retelling in which a student is asked to retell a story. I think that is a very scorable kind of assessment that is really telling a lot about a student's comprehension, as well as a writing piece. I don't think we can separate the writing out from this. Children in reading recovery write on a regular basis. I would want to talk to the reading staff. We also have a number of individual reading inventories that we administer to children, whether or not they would feel that would be inappropriate. I would be very interested in getting some true performance by the children as opposed to a piece of standardized testing that is outside of the actual curriculum. Now, beyond that, I have not really thought of that particular question. I would want to talk to the reading staff about that.
Okay, and the reason I asked is just because you mentioned that both of the assessments that you've shown statistics for are only a piece of the picture.
Exactly.
So if we were to do an entire review, it could be also a review that would include an assessment piece.
And the running record.
To give us the entire picture.
And the running record and retelling are two that we are currently using strongly in the elementary grades.
Thank you. Okay, Dave.
Okay, if there are no other board questions, I'll open up to the audience, or any members of the audience that have questions.
I'm Bill Taylor from Lansdale, and I may be emphasizing the obvious, but I thought that I saw a terrific wave of relief when we got to the end of your presentation and got down to numbers where we wouldn't have to worry about whether or not the word meant what we thought it might mean. Because the technology of English is quite frustrating also. I want to push this a little further. I have a son, this is just another one of these anecdotal stories. I have a son who was heavily disabled as a reading learner, particularly with dyslexia. He's now functioning as an MBA and doing very well. But it took 35 years to make the difference. I do not personally accept the label, and nor do I intend to accept the label of senior citizen, but if I do, I expect to occupy that position for 30 years or so. Those 30 years will move that 7th grader with dyslexia to the wage earner who's paying my Social Security. I hope we do not let our senior citizens sell themselves down the river.
Thanks, Mr. Taylor.
I think I probably fully agree with everybody here tonight that reading is not only
Just state your name
fundamental.
and-
I'm sorry, Jeff Ollis from Lansdale. I figured everyone knew me by now.
We're doing this for TV.
I understand. Reading isn't only fundamental, it's totally essential to everything we do in our entire lives. And I'm hoping that the effectiveness of our reading program is not based totally on the whole silent reading inventory for the past year, because this past year was certainly an anomaly with the work stoppage and the students coming to school and starting up and then going home for several weeks and coming back again. It was very disruptive. While the salaries of the teachers were fully recovered, the education may not be. One question I have is, on the current proposed budget, how many teachers in training are we looking at for the coming year for the reading recovery? No, in the current proposed budget.
This year's budget?
The current proposed
Oh, the current
95-96
proposed
budget.
Two.
We're looking at 2. Okay,
Additional one.
so we're increasing it by 6? Okay, so that's, okay, because earlier you said that it was important that there were 8 teachers in training, and 3 of them are coming from Colonial and Methacton, right? 4 of them are, okay, so we really only have to have 2 to make sure that the program continues. Okay, so I was a little confused on that. So the salaries and all the costs and everything that are on the projected year budget that you have for the 3rd year are totally for our teachers and nothing for any teachers from other schools. Okay, thank you.
In the middle there.
My name's Kim Hutkowski. I'm from Hatfield. My son goes to Oak Park. He is in reading recovery. I should say he's a graduate of reading recovery. And to me, it was a very important program for him. He could barely read his name when he started school. I read to my child just about every night since he was 2. I didn't appreciate the comment that parents don't read. I do. you'll have to excuse me, I'm not a good public speaker. He now gets 100% on his spelling tests. He reads every night to me, to my husband. As a matter of fact, this morning he was reading to no one. He was just in there reading aloud and was very pleased with himself. I think he's really come a long way. I think it's a very important program. And since reading is the basis of everybody's education, I don't think it's something that should be cut out. I think it's very, very important. And like I said, he has graduated. He started reading recovery in January. He was finished by the end of April. I was concerned about that. I was like, how can you do this to my child? And they said, no, he is ready for it. Got 100% on his last test. When he started out in this program, he had maybe a 50%. He is now at 100%. Comprehension, spelling, everything. He has done wonderfully, and I think it's a beautiful program.
Great. Good to hear. Thank you. Ellen?
Good evening. My name's Ellen Janke. I'm from Lansdale. This whole silent reading paper that's caused all this trouble, I want to stick up for it. I understand why there's 4% and 6%. Silent reading really does not exist in first and second grade as to what I remember with my children. They are read that story over and over. And with my experience, my daughter trapped it in her mind. She could not really read. She paid attention. She used every other thing she could think of to try to remember everything she could. So when she took that little test, which is just color in or circle the letter, she did well because she was not taking a cold reading test. There's a big difference between something you've been reading for 2 weeks with the class out loud, Susie reads it, Johnny reads it, and you read it over and over, that when you get to grade 3, it's discovered she can't read cold. She can't take a test cold. She was adapting to that problem that she had because in the earlier grades it was like a spoon-fed sort of thing. And then when you get into the older grades, it's like, oh, kids, read the next 10 pages to yourself. And she freezes, like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? So I think that's why your numbers kind of drop off. It's nothing to say about our reading program. It's to say that the kids are put more on their own, that maybe if we do catch them in first grade, this will not happen. And I strongly feel that way because I feel if she had been caught, her spelling test, that's when it started to show up. Her reading is above grade level because she reads, listens with the class, pays attention, and uses all those other techniques that she's learned, but give her a spelling test, So that's where I see it falling off in her other classes. I see it in the social studies book, in the science book, in the health book. So, I mean, this is an interesting piece of information, but you have to remember first and second grade reading is a spoon-fed process. It is not done on their own. So I would like to see 5 years from now, after reading recovery, what our numbers would be. I think that would be a very important piece of information, because maybe my daughter would have been caught by saying, okay, she's doing well in reading, but how come she can't spell? Or let's take some cold information here. Some of my other notes I have are, well, the senior citizen comment really bothered me because I agree with Mr. Taylor that teach these children to read, and when I'm a senior citizen, they'll be taking care of me. That's extremely important, and do not sell senior citizens short, please. They have a vested interest in our children. Our children are going to be taking care of them for years to come. Their children have taken care of them. Because the statement that was made, if not these children, which ones? If not now, then when? When are we going to do this? We have to do it now. Okay, maybe children didn't seem to have this problem years ago. Kids graduated without knowing how to read, okay? That was a fact. We don't want that to happen anymore. Learning support will probably drop off if we catch these children, and there's a potential here. Let's not lose it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ellen. Sharice?
Good evening, Sharice Krieger from Montgomery Township. I'd like to address a couple of issues this evening in regards to the balanced literacy program. A lot of time was spent on reading recovery, but I have some concerns with the balanced literacy program and some inefficiencies that I've had direct experience with in the 3.5 years that I've been here. I currently have a 3rd grader and a 6th grader at Montgomery Elementary School. My 3rd grader began to read here in the North Penn District. She is an outstanding reader. She loves to read. She reads every night. My 6th grader, a little different story. When we first moved here, she was assessed at being about a year deficient in her overall reading skills. She was tested 2 consecutive years and was deficient in both 4th and 5th grade. When it happened again at the beginning of this year, and her scores had really not improved at all, I became very concerned. I had a meeting at the school with the reading specialist, the guidance counselor, and also Dr. Terozzi. But it wasn't until the question of, Mrs. Krieger, what do you want us to do, was placed before me that I realized that really the ball was in my court, and it was really up to me as a parent to ask the district to do what I saw fit for my child. So I requested that my child be placed with the reading specialist. It's because of that that I also agree with Dr. Terozzi that I believe that a parental outreach component be included in the balanced literacy program K through 12. It's missing. It needs to be there. Not all parents are going to be as persistent as myself. Not all parents are going to take the time to come in and sit down and find out exactly what needs to be done for their child as I did, and I recognize that fact. But I think that it's incumbent upon the school district to include a component such as this, to make it incumbent on the parents to get involved. If the component is not there, you're not placing any responsibility on the parents to become involved. So I'd like to see that. Another thing came out of all of this, and I think it could be a possible component that's missing from your assessment. My 6th grader had her vision tested. She was sufficiently in need of a pair of prescription glasses. Now, apparently she had been tested at some point since coming here in the 4th grade, and her vision was never brought to my attention. She's wearing glasses. Her grades are A's and B's. She doesn't want to go to the reading specialist anymore. In fact, she tells me, Mom, it's boring. We're on the same book that he started with me in January. I'm really not getting anything out of the reading specialist. I'm getting more in my classroom. She's going to be tested, I guess every year there's a final year test that's given to the children who work with the specialists for a final year assessment. Depending on those results, with the improvement in her vision, we will determine whether or not to continue her in the 7th grade with the reading specialist. But I would really like to see something done in the way of assessing the vision of children, especially as they go beyond 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, because as they grow older, their vision does change and tend to change as well, and that's missing. So really, as far as reading recovery goes, I did not have a child in that program. As I said, my child is doing my 3rd grader has done very well with the reading program. But it's my older one, and it's children who come into our system from other districts who may not have the benefits of our 1st and 2nd graders here in North Penn to learn how to read properly. It's those children who come into the system midway that we really need that parental outreach component and possibly a vision assessment test. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, we need to take a short break to change the tape, so we'll do that right now. And get 2 minutes. Well, I'm going to introduce Dr. Persing to bring, I'm sorry, there may be some other questions about reading recovery before we finish that up. Are there any more questions from the audience on reading recovery? Great. Well, I'd like to thank Dr. Terozzi and Ms. Thurston for coming and presenting this to us. I guess as part of the budget discussions, we'll talk about your other teachers, so.
We look forward to hearing from you.
Well, you're going to hear about it tonight, because we're going to address it, so. Dr. Persing, we've concluded all the comments on the reading program, and it's now time to address the budget.
Well, we have three things we'd like to present to you. The first item, we'd like Dennis Kelly to talk with you about an update on the information that he has already handed out to you. The second thing is we'd like to talk a little bit about the positions in technology that we had recommended months ago, just to bring you up to date with that. And the third thing is hopefully we'll talk about reading recovery tonight and see what the pleasure of the board is. So with that, Mr. Bowman, I'd like to begin with Mr. Kelly.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. I've tried to make this sheet a little easy for the board and the public to decipher what's going on with our budget. If you look at the sheet that's titled just 95-96 budget, you see where I have 7195 beginning cash. That would correspond to the opening cash resources shown in the budget book, if anyone has that with them. To that, in reviewing my cash flow over the past couple weeks, I've found that with the addition of the $3 million that we're carrying in abeyance for the teacher salary contract, we'll realize about another $100,000 in additional interest income. Also, we've done better than anticipated also in delinquent tax collection, so I see about another $100,000 coming in there. That it pushes our beginning cash up to $5,991,000. When you take what we're showing in the original proposed budget of revenue, $97,606,000, to that I've deducted the earned income tax that was shown, the $8,500,000 that was shown as a revenue item at that time. To that, I've added the assessments at what would have been our current millage, 249.1. If you just turn over to the next sheet, you'll see where those figures come from. We've also been informed by Montgomery County Board of Assessment of some minor increases in different townships' assessments. So you'll see our value of a mill now is going up to $279,990. So that's using those figures and our current millage. That's what gives us that increase. If you go back to the budget page of the $4,420,000. That adjusts our revenue budget up to $93,526,000 and gives us total revenue for the beginning of the year of $99,518,323. I then took the expenditures budget, which is shown as $103,398,000, and some adjustments have been made. The first major adjustment is general supplies. We'd informed you of cuts that were 50% of both the elementary and the secondary schools. On further investigation and consultation with some of the principals, and in fact direct visitations to see exactly what was in their closets, we determined that a 50% cut would really hurt the program. In talking with Dr. Persing, he agreed to do a 25% cut, and so we've added back in $190,000. $95,000 will go to the secondary schools, $95,000 spread among the elementary schools. On the intermediate unit payments, and if you look at those first five numbers, the 0600, that's just general supplies. That's a basic function category. The actual 12508, if you look in your budget books, that's the ASN numbers, if anybody wants to see where these are coming from. When Mrs. Clark discussed the intermediate unit program, she found out that she could probably save about $90,000. Unfortunately, at the same time, the director of the VOTEC school was talking to Dr. Persing, and when he looked at what we had already budgeted for tuition, he thought it was a little low. So he agreed that we could just switch that $90,000 over into the ABTS tuition that we'll owe. Our numbers of students have been increasing over there, and they've been doing a good job, and we're not getting the credit. At one time, when they figured out at the end of the year what their expenditures were, we would get a credit. That has sort of dropped both years, so that's why that switched over to the tuition. With the recent contract that the board settled with Dr. Bose, I needed to add $11,900 to his salary, $700 to benefits, and $600 to the mileage. The last item on there, Art just informed me this morning that he needed that about $3,000 in for the new truck he wants to get. Apparently the 94 models are all gone, and he has to go with the 95, so he wanted to throw that in just as a budget figure. We will bid that, but he wanted to throw that in just to cover himself. That pushes our expenditures to $103,604,000 and leaves us with a deficit, if you will, of $4,085,984. At our current millage, $279,990, that would necessitate an increase of 14.6 mils. That would take our current 249.1 mils up to 263.7. And that's where we stand right now with the adjustments that we know of. If you go over and you look at summary of revenue from local sources, I didn't want to, with the cost of paper has tripled in the past year. I didn't want to print a whole new document, so what I did is I reprinted this. This is one of the only major pages that will change. And the changes will occur underestimated under delinquent real estate tax and investment income, and under the budget for 95-96, it will be under current real estate taxes. So those of you in the audience can replace this page with the one you currently have. And that's where we stand now, Mr. Bowman. We were going to go on to, I think, technology.
Okay, thanks, Dennis. Why don't we discuss all, or go present them all, and then we'll discuss just, as they affect budget and total after we go through all the presentation. Okay?
One of the caveats that we set out, Mr. Bowman, is to our illustrious Manager of Financial Affairs Director, is that if he came in above 15 mils, we draw in quarter.
Okay. David, you want to cover the technology positions?
Sure, I'll repeat what has been recommended in the past. Talk about currently there are two full-time employees that is supporting the existing technology in the district. One of them is, the position has been basically described as hardware support, and that person is responsible for the routine maintenance of the VAXs that are in the district. It's communications links and troubleshooting problems with all of the personal computers and terminals in the district, including DOS PCs and Macintosh PCs, and assisting with other computer-related tasks such as the periodic batch entry of data for the students' grades when those things come around. There is an entire schedule of tasks that are done on a periodic basis that that person assists with. The other position that we have was dedicated to software application support and training, and that person is responsible for answering questions about any of the software applications that run on the many computer systems in the district, and that person is also responsible for classroom and one-on-one training. Let me skip the Manager of Technology's position for a moment and talk about what we're proposing to add to the support staff. One of the new positions would be a Certified Novell Network Engineer. The district has, I think I'm looking at old information, I have 14, I believe the number is 18 independent Novell networks within the district. The majority of those are part of the upgrade to the library systems and the automation of the card catalogs. There is also the networks that are associated in the high school, the business laboratories that are Novell networks. There is a Novell network in the transportation department, in the bus garage. All of those new systems have been on maintenance contracts, and they were purchased with maintenance. As those things come off, they will need care and feeding, and a certified Novell network engineer would be able to take care of those crucial services that those kinds of systems need, including software upgrades, the types of system maintenance that come with capacity planning to make sure that their hard disks have enough capacity, memory, and those types of services. We are in very much need for timely and experienced support in that area. The second new position sounds similar to one of the positions we already have, in that they would provide support of the administrative computer systems. And right now, that's being done by a single person. We're recommending that that person that would take care of our VAC systems have the function of a VAC system manager, take care of the local area network that's in this particular building, and also be an expert on pentimation software, which is the software used for administrative purposes. So we're recommending that person also has programming experience, as the pentimation software is customizable, and the types of reports that it could generate is a function that we have lacked since the last manager of technology, that's been vacant for about 3 years now, that person was the last person that did any customization of that type of system. Of the 4 positions that we would have that would comprise the support team, where feasible, all of those people would be cross-trained in an effort to provide the district with flexible and responsive support. Supervising those people, we're recommending that we fill that 3-year-old position as a manager of technology. That person would supervise the day-to-day operations of the existing computer systems, supervise the support staff, and that manager would play a key role in the development and implementation of a North Penn School District technology strategic plan. That person would be an internal technical advisor and would also review all computer-related purchase orders to ensure that all purchases will adhere to the directions of the school district. The manager would also be responsible for developing operational and system development guidelines and district policies on computer security. That, in a nutshell, is what we would recommend to provide, again, flexible, full-time support for all of our technological needs and allow us to set a clear direction for purchases and the strategic direction of technology in the district. Try to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, David. Let's do one more thing. Let's talk about the reading recovery positions first, and then we'll have a general discussion of all the budget impacts. As you are aware, Dr. Turcosi and Dr. Persing have recommended 6 new positions to put us up to 8. Is that right? In the reading recovery. We have 2 in there now in the budget. We want to expand that to 8.
Well, that, Carol, help me out, but would that be a total of 3 positions, really not 6?
6 half-time.
6 half-time.
6 half-time, so really 3 positions.
Okay.
At 26,000 for half-time, though.
That's correct. In other words, it'd be 26,000 per person.
52,000.
Times 6.
So it's about 150 today or something. So we need to decide what we're going to do on that, and so that we can bring it to a vote on Thursday, but also so that we can have it incorporated into the final budget that we hopefully will vote on next Thursday.
Did I hear correctly tonight that reading is going to be placed in the curriculum review for this year? When is that going to be reviewed?
I believe Dr. DeRosa said
95,
yeah,
96.
next year.
Is that correct, Dr. DeRosa?
It was supposed to be reviewed this year, and it was put on hold, and we intend to review it again, and it will be in the review next year.
Is that review because of the teacher strike?
Yes.
I would support Dr. Persing's recommendation to go with 2, and also the frugal position I think he has taken, that if it's going to be in review, the entire reading program, of which reading recovery is a part of, that the program be maintained but not elaborated until review and recommendations and a report is submitted by the review committee, as Mrs. Clark was put through with her guidance review and yet her health review to come. Everything in guidance was frozen until that review was finished.
Donna wants to keep just the 2 positions that are in there now.
I support Dr. Persing's position on this budget.
In other words, what's in there now and adding no more. Any other comments or?
Yeah, I heartily disagree, because I just think if there's anything that is the basic mission of any school district is to teach first graders to read. And if we are having a problem and we have found what we think is a solution to helping those kids, that I don't need a review to tell me that I may need a review to tell me if we should be doing it in 6th and 7th grade, but not 1st grade, and I think we're gonna go ahead and add the additional teachers for next year, at a cost of what I understand to be $160,000.
Just so I understand, there was some concern, Dr. Tricosi, about if we only have 6 people in the program. In other words, we put 2 in, the Thaxton 2 and Colonial 2. There's a possibility that we couldn't run the program, and who decides that?
There is what we report to NYU, all our data, that would be the first site. We should get permission either from NYU or Ohio State University, which is the North American Reading Recovery site, for permission to conduct the program with less than 8 teachers.
But what's the, I mean, what's the purpose of them saying, no, you can't do it, since we want to really get, even if we get 6 teachers trained, that's better than none.
Part of the function of the class, of the teachers in training, is the interaction and collaboration they have from working with one another. They really learn from and work with one another. When you have a class of 12 compared to a class of 6, you reduce that by half, and therefore we may not get the teacher training at the implementation level.
Fair enough.
Can I ask if, in addition to the cost and salary, I also saw teacher training costs
Yeah,
associated.
Dr. Tricosi, since we're going to ask you a lot of questions, I guess
Well, I didn't know, I thought
could
we
you
were.
come on up front? Well, obviously, we're going to debate this, so we'll have some more questions, so if you wouldn't mind coming back up front.
Well, we're showing some prices, I guess, on the 95, 96. It said 8 trained teachers, but there's also training costs, is there not?
Those are currently in the budget. They're in the budget.
But for
I put
the additional amount? I mean, if we've only allocated 2 new teachers, did you allocate training costs for 6?
The budget, as I put it forth to Dr. Fike and Dr. Persing, included training for 8. If they have taken that out, I am not aware of that.
No, I think
Okay.
that's still in, Carol.
I don't know.
I think the difference, Mrs. Shar, is that Dr. Fike and Dr. Persing were dealing with the educational end, and Mr. Schmidt was dealing with the salary end. So I don't think Fred only included X amount of teachers, while they're included in the entire educational component.
And that does take in, though, the other affiliated expenses, benefits, I mean, do we
It
have?
doesn't take in
Workman's
benefits.
comp,
The 100
you know,
and-
Social Security, et cetera?
Right, I think it's 152,000 would be the salaries, and
Yeah, if you're using 52,000, that's got to take in everything.
I'm confused.
Salaries 31 or
Yes, Mr.
32.
Bowman,
You say it's in the budget, but then you say it's in the budget, but it's not in the budget for the teachers, for the salaries.
Right.
Okay, so we have the materials and the training aids and those kind of things, and then going to NYU and those kind of, that's in there for 8, not 2. But there are salaries in for 2, not 8.
That's correct.
Is
Because,
that
well,
correct?
and that's only because you had
Okay.
different people handling different aspects of that budget.
So we could see a discount here.
Man,
Good,
I
We've
thought
got
I
money
did
coming
magic.
back.
I don't know about this. Okay.
We would expect those 6 teachers then to provide these services for approximately 60 students if you were to fill all the slots.
And we will fill all of the slots.
To have. I wonder, is there any, are you seeing any effects of the dropping of ability grouping in the elementary level? Is that playing a role now that we're going to whole group? We're going to whole group in the classroom, and now we have to go down to, you're talking about possibly having the layered ability grouping, but in the specialty services rather than in the classroom itself, as it used to be. You know, it's just recently that we stopped having the students categorized and taught according to ability levels.
And I would say we have data up into grade 3 about those students, and no, I do not see that that has had a negative impact.
Any other suggestions as to how many between 2 and 8 that we want to add? Or, as I understand it, there's 2 are fully covered, right? And if we're gonna add any more teachers, we now have to cover in the budget somehow the salaries associated with however many more teachers we wanna put in. Donna has said 0 more. Bill has said 6 more. Let's get some consensus so we can.
I'd like to say something. Comment was made, if you look on the Holt reading score, Holt silent reading inventory, that 4% of the first graders are below grade level is not an epidemic. But if you follow that down to the 6th grade, where you have 33% below grade level reading, I see that as an epidemic.
But they have to be evaluated in first grade, Bill. I mean, they're a part.
We got a problem with reading, Vicki. There's 33% of the 6th graders below grade level. There's a problem.
Absolutely.
All right?
That's
And
not
we
what I'm
have to
saying.
address it early on, when the kids are young and when they're still teachable, not in 6th grade.
But they're not demonstrating the problems in first grade, which is where they.
Well, we don't know that, Vicki.
Well,
We're saying is we don't have
right.
enough teachers to address all the kids that have been identified as being below grade level. And that statistics bear that out, and that we don't have enough teachers to teach them all. What we have to decide now is, given the budget constraints and where we're going, how many more teachers do we want to add to this program? I don't think anybody discounts the worth and the need. Right now, we have to decide what budgetarily can we afford to put in there to get us some kind of balance between providing as many teachers possible given the amounts. Mrs. Mengel made a decision and said, I want to keep it at 2. What I'm trying to understand here is we're not debating the program, we're debating how many people we want to add. So if we can focus on that, hopefully, then we can give Dr. Persing some clear direction to get the monies put in the budget or left alone or whatever. Okay, so if we leave 2 in, the way Mrs. Mengel has, then some of the materials, training materials, et cetera, should come back out of the budget. If we, and that's in there, if we add people, now we have to add salaries in, and if we only add 4 people or 2 people or whatever, then we have to take out some of the materials part of the budget. And that has to be adjusted, and we need to get some consensus and some direction for Dr. Persing tonight, so that he can go out and work with Dennis and we can get this coordinated into the budget. So if we could focus on that, please, I would appreciate it, and maybe we can come to some solutions
So
here.
Dick, let me get out of the way and say that I am in favor of the program as recommended by Dr. Tarosi, 8 teachers.
You want +6. Mr. Allen wants +6, Mrs. Mengel wants 0. Ralph, Terry, Tom, who's
Want me to
ready?
go next?
Yeah, go next, Tom.
I don't support adding the 6 teachers. And I would like to add that at one time, while I do agree we need to keep looking at this and agree with Dr. Persing, we should reevaluate the whole program. I think it's something that Dr. Bose can look at when he comes on board. I think we can't lose sight that we had a rather large group of parents who came here to ask us to look at reinstating the honors program. And we quickly passed that off and said, we'll look at it. We haven't done a doggone thing about it. Now, we have a program to come in for reading, and I fully support, we need, first grade is the time to teach kids to read, there's no doubt about it. But we just leave the parents high and dry that asked us about the honors program, and we said we're going to look at it. So if we're going to look at honors, which I believe we will be doing soon, then I'd like for us to look at the reading program and leave it the way that Dr. Persing originally presented it.
Okay, you're saying 0.
0.
Terry?
I think what Mrs. Jenke had to say about the silent reading and the kids memorizing stuff, I see it with my own kids. They're great memorizers. But the 2 that had the opportunity to read both had trouble. And I did my homework as a mother too, and I read diligently to the first one. It's gotten busier since then. But
busy having. Just kidding.
but I don't think, as much as I would like to see the budget stay where it is and everything, I don't want to cut it here. It's too dear to my heart. So I will stick with Mr. Allen.
Favor 6, okay. Mr. Redcamp?
I think it's a very excellent program. I think that this is a tough budget year, and that the difference between, 10 and 16, reading recovery teachers next year isn't going to change. I support the program, but I also support Dr. Persing's recommendation.
Okay, 0. Vicki?
I'd hope that no one out there questions either side of this position as being anti-reading. I think all of us know that that's the foundation for which all of our children learn. I would have to support Dr. Prosing's presentation that we do an evaluation, mainly because we do have reading specialists also there. And I do know they're busy, but perhaps we do need to see how they're being utilized in conjunction with this program. There's a considerable amount of funds being thrown here with one-on-one tutoring, along with the reading specialists that are there originally for this very purpose of serving this. So I'm going to go with the 2 additional letters currently in the budget. It's not a matter of reduction, it's a matter of maintaining and then evaluation.
Well, I understand. And so I'll
Could
put
I
you down
also
for 0.
ask, though, that we look towards perhaps following this through? We've heard
Fully expected.
comments regarding how this is going to correct this, or supposedly correct the problem at 6th grade. We don't know. The program is new. I would like to see that if there is these students being entered in, okay, they may leave and they may exit the program, but it's for 1st graders only. So we don't know where they are in 2nd and 3rd and 4th, or if they're not a part of those percentages anyway at 5th or 6th grade. So as this program continues, I'd like to see follow-up.
We do that with all, essentially with all the.
We've
grade
stopped
levels.
tracking though, so this is something I'd like to see a follow-up.
Maybe I can offer up some kind of a compromise solution here. We have 13 elementary schools, correct? So we have some schools that are not covered and will not be covered after this year if we have only 2 selected. I would suggest, rather than going none or 6, that possibly we add 3. That gets us up to 13. We have 1 then for each one of the elementary schools, so that we can hit the kids that are in the biggest trouble right then in those schools and move them through. Obviously, some schools, there's probably more deserving kids than others, but nonetheless, that gives us the ability to have the ones that are in trouble the most in each school handled. Because as I understand it now, either the teachers move around, or there's some schools are not even being addressed. So, do I hear, right now, I didn't see any clear majority on all or none. Well, I had 3 and 4.
No, I thought that number they gave us was going to take us to 1 teacher in every school.
Now, it takes us to 16,
Okay.
and it would not be 1 per school. It'd be more than 1 per school.
I'd be very happy with 1 in each school.
Can I
You have to,
get
you
some
can't have
support on
12
that?
schools with something like this and have 1 without.
As long as Dennis still survives, I think that was a 15 mil.
We can take out administrative.
That'll still come in. He's
Well,
okay.
that adds about 75K.
He's okay.
Can I ask one question though? Can I ask why we go with half-time employees, which all bring the benefit costs for twice as many people, rather than full-time? And that way have half as many people gathering the benefit costs?
What? She'd addressed that they're only doing this half-time, but they're also doing another job half-time. In other words, you might have a kindergarten teacher in the morning who teaches reading recovery in the afternoon, and a reading recovery teacher that teaches reading recovery in the morning who teaches kindergarten in the afternoon, and they basically use the same classroom to do the kindergarten teaching, but that's 2 separate, in other words, they only do the reading recovery for half the time, but they're a full-time employee.
Not necessarily though, didn't you say, Carol? Sometimes they might be a teacher's aide that's part-time, or they might be a non.
At this point, they are all employed full-time. But for the additional people, it is possible that they would be employed.
And they have to be teacher certified,
That's
correct?
correct.
So the chances are that we're gonna select a teacher rather than who is going to be in a teaching assignment somewhere else in the district or in that school, rather than a teacher's aide half the day and a reading recovery specialist the other half the day.
Both possibilities exist. We
Both, it could be
I
those.
understand, but to me, I deal in probabilities. If we have positions for teachers and we're gonna hire them at a teacher's salary, then we want them to do that.
Yes.
Well, many of our
Let's
teachers that
explore
are
that, though.
available, why
If
not?
Fred, you could elaborate a little bit. If we had a person that only worked part-time, what is the obligation on benefits if it was?
If they're a half-time person, they're not gonna get benefits.
So basically, we could, if we could find people that would be willing to work part-time, there would be
So
no
that's the
benefits,
other
and it
one
would just be
about
salary, which could be a very cost-effective way about providing those half-time positions.
Right, but you said these did have benefits, the ones.
Well, these are people who have a full-time position, which
I'd say
includes a
one way or
two do.
another.
Currently, the two do that you have in there, right?
And the 8
So
this year.
so the 6 that we're we're looking to add, there's right now that's not in the budget whether they have benefits or not, correct? So if we hire 6 aides who are teacher certified, who are gonna be an aide a half a day and a reading recovery specialist a half a day or in training, now it makes sense that, yeah, that saves a lot in terms of the benefits that we don't have to pay.
No, that wouldn't save us on the
No,
benefits,
because
because
they
now they're
would've
full-time.
gotten
Yeah.
it. Now, see,
I'm
as
sorry,
an aide, they
It
didn't
also,
get benefits.
it also would be unlikely that we would have 6 people that we could use part-time as aides anyhow. Most of our aides are full-time. In
Okay.
fact, almost all of them are full-time.
But it
David's point is correct. The only problem is that can we get the people that we would want in those
Could we
positions?
find 6
that are-
people interested in part-time positions?
Well, we could, it would be a greater probability that we could find 3 people interested
Well,
so.
I'm sorry, 3.
So maybe if we focus
Try to
on the
see
3 and
that.
try to
Just
find
didn't work
3
the way-
part-timers instead of 3 full-timers, that means also that we don't have to worry about finding jobs for them or the flip-flops, who covers for whom in the other half of the day.
And one thing before you leave this, I need to make crystal clear. I want you to know I support this program. I don't want you to walk away and don't think that I don't support it. What you charge me with as a board is trying to find the best way that we can get a budget together, the most effective, cost-effective way of doing it. I don't want you to walk away and think that I'm not supporting it. I am supporting it. But I think, and if you say to me, we're going to have those positions and you have to find the money and you keep it under 15 mils or 15 mils, then we have to do that. So it's a value judgment. That's really what we're dealing with.
So what do we have here for count? 4-4? What's the count?
Well, no, we had 3 for 6, we had 4 for 0, and we had 1 for 3.
No, I changed mine to say the bill.
Oh.
So
You're
we
gonna
have
go
3
with
for
3
3.
now, too?
I said that.
So we have
Okay.
4,
Say
3,
the
and 1.
bill.
So how many support 3 additional?
In lieu of 6, I'll
In lieu of
go for
6,
3.
okay,
Not in addition to 6.
okay, so.
As I
Okay,
understand
so
it,
we have
12 people.
5 and adding 3. Okay? We have 5 for adding 3. Okay, Dr. Persing, I think the direction is put the 3 salaries in there and take out the 3 extra positions in terms of materials and all that kind of stuff, so.
Could I also recommend that if Fred becomes aware of anybody that would care to work part-time, that 3 part-time positions, again, would save us the benefit portion of any additional salaries we have to come up with.
Sure, well, that's the first priority for hiring, I would think.
Well, we haven't done that in the past. We haven't done that in the past. We've looked for full-time people that could do something else. What I'm saying is, to come up with 3 positions now, perhaps there are 3 part-time people where we could save the money by not having to pay benefits.
Okay.
If he can find part-time people that are willing to do that.
Yeah, and I think in fairness to Dr. Terozzi, are you comfortable with that, with potential part-time people?
Because of their specialized nature, I think that's great. Okay.
And with the requirement to have, the requirement with Ohio or wherever to have the full group, where does that put us?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because I just want to clarify where I think we are, I'm not sure. When you say 3, Mr. Bowman.
3 additional.
To the 2, which
Yes,
makes
so
5.
puts us to 5.
We're in fine shape.
That gives us 1 per elementary school at the end of the year. And I assume that the trainees work at the different schools with the, okay. So by the end of the year, we would have a reading recovery specialist for every elementary school in the district. Great.
That's correct.
Okay.
2 are already in.
I thought we went from 2 to 3, so what you were able to get was 2 to 5.
Yeah, I suggested adding 3 to what's in the budget.
Instead of 8, 3 additional.
Yeah, instead of adding 6 or adding 0, I suggest we add 3 to get us up to 13 total. Okay.
3 additional to the 2.
3 additional to the budget.
Right.
So 5
Okay, but I heard him say
They're
that.
gonna have-
So if we add 75 to the minus, to the 4,085,000, we get out to Dennis at 14.9999 mils. Okay, enough for that. Can we, is there any comments from the audience on the thing? Chuck, since you haven't spoken yet. Try to keep it brief. I'm running out of gas.
Good evening, I'm Chuck Hammond from Montgomery Township. Mr. Bowman, I'm also a man of numbers, and maybe something is confusing to me. If I have a teacher that's teaching half a day in one school, why can't that teacher go over and teach at the other school and teach the reading program at the other school and have it covered? I think the money that we're spending on this teacher and having it work as a teacher's aide, somehow or other, I don't think the dollar value on a teacher's aide would be the same that I would be paying for this reading teacher. I mean, I am completely in favor of reading. My whole career is based on reading and math and this type of stuff. But for adding some of these things that we're adding $600 and some odd million or $650,000 to a budget of 95-96 for 15 students or something, I agree totally with a lot of the statements that were said before that I think this whole reading program needs to be reevaluated, gentlemen and ladies. I think we're spending entirely too much money on a few students. If the whole entire reading program itself was looked at, perhaps we can benefit all the students in this, and not seeing a drop from 1986 to 1995 as significant as some of these drops are. With all these advanced programs and all the things we're doing, we do not seem to have improved that at all. And my position, surprisingly, is supporting Dr. Pershing on this one, that I think we should, in fact, keep it as it is today and not add the other person. And if we're concerned about the other schools, perhaps instead of having these teachers as teachers' aides, there might be another solution to have them teach the reading programs in the schools that are not having that particular portion of the
Okay, thank you. Just to clarify, the reason I suggested 1 per school is because they only teach a half a day of reading recovery, and they do that at 1 school, so that we need, to have the reading recovery program at every elementary school, we have to have 13 different teachers. Is that correct, Karen? Thank you. Okay, Jeffrey?
I'm Jeff Alls from Lansdale. I'm happy to hear that the board, I believe there's a consensus to add 3. From what I am learning about this program, it seems to be very important, and I think it will have a lot of impact in the future, a lot of positive impact. I want to caution the board in trying to look for part-time employees for reading recovery. If we go through the expense of training these people, they become very valuable to other school districts where they can get a full-time job. I think if we are going to train these people, they should be our employees, and we should do our best to retain them.
Okay, good point. Sharice?
Sharice Krieger from Montgomery Township. I just have a question on the potential cost sheet where it breaks down the annual cost per student. It says that the reading recovery annual cost per student is $2,600. If the average reading recovery student is in there for half a year, wouldn't that cost be more in the range of $1,300 per student? If they're only in for a half a year?
The reading recovery teacher works with 10 students. I simply divided 10 into the reading recovery teacher's salary.
So does that does that not include the supplies and everything? Or does that?
That does not include the supplies. So the supplies per student are some markers, a little notebook. The supplies are per teacher, Sharice. They are not per student that I
Okay.
have in here.
Well, it's just that the way that this is all broken down, it makes it look, when, with the grade 1 retention costs at 7,200, it just wasn't consistent, so I just wanted to clarify that. I mean, if they're only in there for a half a year, and the annual cost is $2,600, it would seem that per student, per half year would only be $1,300.
I understand what you're
I don't get it.
saying.
It's just the way it's written.
I agree with you, because if you look at that number and the way it was calculated, $26,000 divide by 10 students, but that one teacher is going to teach more than 10 students. It's actually
That teacher teaches 10 students.
No, but it's 10 students.
Plus another half of the job, the 10 students throughout the year.
Yeah.
Teaches one
But the number of students you're saying could be replaced?
10 for the whole year.
For the whole year, right. But
Yeah,
they start out
that's-
with 4.
That's one at a time, please. Okay? Dr. Tarosi.
Thank you. That's good.
Close enough.
Please.
I based this on data that we got from Ohio State University, and this was the way they calculated the student cost for reading recovery. And in talking with Dennis, I took half of the teacher's salary divided by the total number that the teacher can work with in reading recovery for that year, thereby ending up with $2,600 per student. I understand what you're saying, because the student isn't in a whole year. You think it should look like less than this amount, if I'm hearing you.
Well, I mean, just the way that this one graph is laid out, it should have been that way. But the other thing I wanted to point out is I really would have liked to seen some cohesiveness to this presentation in regards to the actual costs, with now finding out that it's much different. It's much more expensive than it was laid out, and because maybe 3 different administrators were working on giving this presentation, there really didn't seem to be a cohesive financial picture presented tonight. And to tell you the truth, I'm a little lost about what the actual bottom line is for the overall program. And if the board is as confused as I am, I would think that they would give the administrators direction to come back next week before you vote on this with a clearer picture on what the actual costs are.
Thanks, Bruce. Just to clarify, we put in that it costs approximately $6,000 per teacher to be trained, plus the materials of $2,500. So we're roughly figuring about $8,500 in the budget per teacher to be trained, correct? Okay, so that came out from your statistics. What is yet to be put in is for the additional 3 people, the salaries for those 3 additional teachers that we're going to put in, just so I understand and make sure that everybody understands. And we'll also withdraw $8,500 for 3 teachers, because it's in right now for a total of 8 teachers, correct?
It's in for a total of 8, and I will withdraw. However, $8,500 I think is somewhat high, because the cost for Shippensburg is approximately $1,200, plus the materials, which are $2,500, plus the teacher training. The $8,500 is the fee for Colonial and Wissahickon, not Facton.
Okay,
Colonial and
because when I was looking at the NYU costs over here, okay, so it is less than that.
It is less than that, but I will take those monies out of the budget.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's based on 8. Okay, any other comments, questions? Bill?
I think we had something.
Bill Taylor, Lansdale, 2 shorties. This proves that numbers aren't any less seductive and dangerous than words are. As far as I know, you can deduct the half-time salary, and you can deduct the fringe benefits, but you have the same training costs, and the part-time teacher can teach the same number of students in this program as the full-time teacher can, no less, no more. But you cannot predict how long the individual child will be in the program. So you really can't hit it ahead of time.
Thanks, Bill. Any other questions, comments? Okay, if not,
Dr. Frank had a comment he was going to clear.
Just to clarify Sharice's comment, the word annual mathematically, if you just eliminate that cost per student, then that chart's right. It's $2,600 per student. That annual does not pertain to that reading recovery. Therefore, the average year is a half a year, but if you just dropped annual and read that $2,600 cost per student, then the total cost per student is $2,600. The annual is what throws you off.
but if you consider that the student only goes in the program once and ends in a year, then it doesn't matter because it's only once a year anyway.
But it's 10 in the 26,000.
Okay, we've digressed. That's it for the evening. Thanks for coming. Oh, yeah,
Is this not a budget?
sure, I thought that, since we had come back to the reading.
You stopped it.
I thought we had covered David's stuff.
But you said we go back for questions.
Oh,
You said
well, we headed back to reading recovery, and, all right, so that's it for reading recovery. All right, we'll talk about technology then.
Good night, Dr. Tarosi.
Good night.
We won't call you back up, promise.
Now we have to back up to those, to Dennis and,
Any questions of David on
yes,
technology?
well, for Dennis and David. I have concerns regarding the increase of the data processing technology staff from 2 to 5. I've had concerns since it was being increased by such a great percentage. I feel much more comfortable if we were shifting the work that's now being handled by 2 to 4 at the most. I did talk to Mr. Schmidt late last week, I guess, regarding the lack of a job description and also what qualifications would be expected of the personnel that we're talking about hiring, so that we could see the clear delineation of their job responsibilities. I just feel that it's jumping a bit too far, too fast, considering you've got to establish the new workload for people, you know, since we have had 2 people providing these services. Now, I know that you have some grand plans for incorporating the technology into the classroom. I welcome that day, David, as well as getting our ESC up to snuff with the 20th century here as far as computers are concerned. But I think that it's a little too much and moving too fast. I would rather see if we could develop it into 2 additional positions and see how that plays out. Since I don't have the job descriptions, I don't say which ones.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, that's what I'd like to try to narrow down. Is there a problem with the manager position? That is one of the 3 new positions.
Well, where I'm looking is, if we would traditionally have a position, we would be able to see exactly where what divided those 2 jobs and responsibilities. I would say, speaking with Fred, he felt strongly regarding the manager. I said, I'd just like to see if we could incorporate perhaps the service positions that are there with the network engineer, with the
well, that's why
system operations.
Fundamentally, first, I'm just asking, I mean, do we see that there is a need for a manager of technology, someone that can advise us on directions, and a key person in the development of a technology strategic plan to be able to oversee the purchases that are coming in the district on a regular basis, to be able to make sure that bids are properly specified, the approval of those bids that come in, to review them for appropriateness and correctness, and also to set direction for the support people that are there. Well, there's 2 there now, but again, I guess I'm asking.
We need it laid out. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Exactly. You've read your descriptions, but it doesn't really give us a clear picture of all of these different positions, the 2 we have as well as what really defines them. I would rather leave that,
Well, two of the new
through the
positions are
administrative
lower-level
discussions.
positions and support, and one is a management position, and I guess I'm just trying to find out if there's a question about the management position, which I believe we need to be able to help us implement a strategic plan. In other words, we need somebody with that level of expertise that understands computer technology, telecommunications technology, network technologies, applications, and software applications to be able to guide us into the future, hopefully to integrate those with the cable TV technology that we've also talked about and had reports on in the past. So again, to strongly advocate that position to set us up for the future so that we can develop a coherent plan. So that was piece one. Is there an agreement for the manager position? Because the other two positions are support positions, and that we can address separately. I'm just trying to find out if we have an agreement on the manager's position.
How many would they be managing? 4, 5? They'd be managing the other 4 people, so they're a supervisor of the 4
Yes.
staff members.
Yes.
But you expect them to be
Vicki, I
hands-on,
would-
right? You do
I'm sorry.
expect them to be hands-on and performing
The 4
the
support
functions
people?
beyond.
Oh, absolutely. They're
and have a
all
support
entirely
role.
hands-on support roles.
I would suggest to you, Vicki,
That's what I like
that the
to-
supervision part of that is a very important
Fun.
component.
I know you were an advocate, and I took that in,
We
and that's
need
why I'm
a
saying,
Excuse me?
I'm looking
We
to
need
see
a
this
system.
condensed, and I would go with some administrative direction on doing that.
Can I piggyback on what you're saying, maybe? I think that one of the things that we've lacked here for years is a real strong computer technology-oriented direction.
They don't
Not
have
only year to year, but department to department. And what are we gonna do 5 years from now? I just think it's been a hodgepodge, and I think we're paying the price now. So personally, I'll ask the question, I think we need a person in here as the technology guru, but the other things, can they be subcontracted out for a year or two and be done as efficiently, possibly more expensively, but at least you're not making a commitment to a person, and then we see if it's more cost effective to do, hire people a year or two down the road. Does that work? Are these the types of things that can be subcontracted out and put out for bid instead of hiring in person?
There are some aspects of the overall support program that those 4 people that provide that could definitely be,
If the work were there needed to be. In other words, could we work with?
again, when we talk about, I was just doing calculations, we have 18 Nobel local area networks. All of those networks are not interconnected at this point in time, so there are 18 separate Nobel networks, all of which need some type of systems management. A single person that was dedicated to that task could make the rounds to those networks to make sure that they were up and running properly, that when there was a problem, could be dispatched from here or wherever they're located to deal with problems like that. Can we come up with a bid and find an organization that's willing to do that for us? Yes, the answer to that is yes.
But David, we have this year, we contracted with a person this year to fill in for somebody who was on a leave of absence. And we're paying a lot more for that hourly rate than we would if the person were employed by us. But I think that it's not unlike what the gentleman said over here a little bit ago. The way that we maximize the people that we have is to get them the familiarity with the stuff that we do, the equipment that we have, and the kinds of tasks that we expect them to do. If you've got somebody that's contracted, you never know how long you have that person for. And we've piecemealed it and piecemealed it and piecemealed it. There's never been a comfort level from my perspective, and I'm sure most of my colleagues here agree with this, in terms of where we are and where we have been with technology. And this is an attempt, and I know David has spearheaded it, but I think we all feel pretty seriously about the need to finally do something serious about the technology. It's getting well beyond us. I mean, it's ridiculous, some of the things that we can't do as an organization with technology.
Fred, I don't.
And let me say, I wasn't advocating sending us out to a third party. Again, if we look at one of the aspects that you will pay for in a contract that will send this out to a third party, for example, if you subcontracted the system management for these local area networks, one of the things that affects the price is how quickly do you want the response? Would you like it in 4 hours? Would you like it in 8 hours? Would you like it tomorrow? Each one of those is priced accordingly. A person that's here that could be dispatched immediately or whenever they can get to it, which is dependent on the task that they're involved with. So again, that is another aspect that will affect the price of outsourcing that kind of support. The other point that I think that Fred was trying to make is the things that we haven't done because we haven't had the person. I think we ran into a situation where we questioned Dennis this year and said, can we get this kind of information out of the system, the penimation system that we have today? Or if we don't have this kind of a module in place, what do we have to do to get that? Well, the answer to that is support. The answer to that is training, to be able to bring in a new accounting module, to take advantage of the systems that are built in that we're not utilizing in the penimation software, which is all aimed at the administrative functions. We have not been able to customize those because we haven't had the people. And the type of staff that we're advocating, which is 4 people dedicated to the support of the systems, hopefully with the right training, we can cross-train them. We would have
4 people.
with 4 people to cross-train them, to be able to provide us with custom programming, to be able to provide the training to the staff. When I talk about staff, I'm talking about administration, teachers, counselors, medical staff, all the people that we're trying to deliver the automation to, by the use of putting the terminals that we put into each one of the elementary school buildings, to make sure that those people are always up and running, and it's a matter of the telecommunications lines, printers. It's very involved, and the more we get into it, the more involved it'll get. This is not even the end of it.
No,
This is the
I don't
beginning
think
of
it
it.
is, and that's because it is the beginning. I'm seeing it, if we double the staff, we go from the 2 to the 4, that allows us to begin to phase in and establish really all it is that we're looking for in that 5th person in the future. Allows Dr. Bose to come in. I know we need to add to the staff, there's no doubt about it. I mean, Dennis's secretary, Tony's our computer expert around here. We definitely, we need to move forward. I would just like to see if we could give us time to suddenly create the work that's there. I mean, yeah, there's things that have been put aside, but I also know that with Bill, he was worried about too many users to be able to plug into the system. You can't have more users in your
Once again, I mean,
equipment.
I had a lot of input into these recommendations. I absolutely believe we need a manager of technology to be able to set us on the right course and make sure that all staff is adhering to that in the purchases in the areas of computers that might fit into their special curriculum areas, whether it's the automation of our library catalog systems. The support, I believe that there's enough work to go around for 4 people. And that was my recommendation. Could we get by with less? Could we outsource it? There are combinations, but this was my best recommendation.
Is there value to getting the one manager and letting him set us in a direction, evaluate,
And then
set a
move
direction,
things around. Right.
and then add the people as needed?
I think we've already evaluated what we need, and I don't think these jobs or these positions and the requirements for those positions and what they're going to do is going to go away. I think it's going to get even more stressing and more difficult.
The only concern I have, Bill, is that if we agree that we're going to hire a manager of technology and let them make those decisions, that means the hiring of those people at least another year away. Because if we don't put the dollars in the budget, then it is another year away. If we do put the money in the budget and then allow that person to make some decisions personnel-wise to kind of fine-tune the administrative support, what we already have, hardware support, how we solidify software support and the networking pieces, it's a budget. I think that person, if the money is there, that person does get to choose the best mix of people to be able to support the district. But without that, we're definitely a year away from having a full staff.
I'd like to, at this point, maybe table the discussion on this. We have to have a meeting on Thursday night to vote on the arbitrator's report. I would suggest that we continue the budget discussions at that time. Maybe people can go back and look over the technology positions
Yep.
again so that they understand that if there's any more discussion.
I'd also say that there are also some preliminary job descriptions for all of these that.
I have these, supposed to be passed out to at least,
Oh, you do?
David and I have been working on these, and they're, okay, for the network specialist, analyst we call it, and the.
One of each of these, Rob?
Yes.
Okay, that'd
That
be great.
will
That
help.
way people can look at that. Also, I'd like to, if on Thursday night, we'll vote on the arbitrator's report first, and then we'll open budget discussions. I'd like for you to, if you have any items or particular areas of the budget where you'd like it addressed, I'd like you to let me know now so that Dr. Persing can prepare for the Thursday night meeting and be able to
We need a-
address those items.
These are
We
ones
need a
I've
regular
already brought
agenda.
up, though.
Okay, but
We have
let
to
him
put
know
on
now,
agenda.
and he'll put the agenda.
At our last meeting, when we discussed budget, everybody agreed that they would put in writing within a couple of days, it was several weeks ago, to the administration, any special requests, so they'd be able to answer them tonight. And I'm hoping that we don't have a lot of new requests coming out of the woodwork here.
No, these were phone calls, though, Ralph. I'm sorry if I didn't send them certified or anything, but I made my calls.
Okay.
Do we need to refer them again?
Well, I do think we need to at least say what they are,
Say
so
them right
so that
now?
everybody
And they
understands
should be-
what we're
they
talking
should be
about, so you
published.
can review the budget again, and that Dr. Persing can have the right people here, and the specifics about them. I think, Mrs. Mengel, you'd
Yes,
like a review
yes.
of legal?
Please place on the agenda, legal fees,
Okay,
the honors program at the middle school level, and team teaching in the middle school level. And I also want to know what we're doing with the ESL program, and whether we are going to remain with the people that have served us at this point, or whether we're going with teachers. I would like to have that discussion.
Donna, we can answer that right now. We're going to stay with the program we have in place.
Yes, the people-
Thank you.
okay, we're,
Super.
What'd you say?
you want to address, now, we're not addressing the validity of these programs, we're addressing what's in the budget for them, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And if we
Just-
went with
just wanna
teachers as
clarify.
opposed to those, we
Gesundheit.
went with bargaining unit people as opposed to those we have now, it would be a budget issue.
No, I understand, but we want to focus, we're not asking for a review of things, we're
No.
asking for a review of what's in the budget.
No, we're
Okay.
talking money.
Vicki, did you say you had some items?
Well, mine, I wanted to review the dollars in the 1,100 account salaries, regular education salaries, line items.
Did you get that, Tom?
I just want to have,
You get that?
Pick the lines that you want me to tell you.
it's salaries,
Page 12.
regular program salaries, 1,100, page 12.
Okay. Other ones?
Yes, superintendent's budget. I do see Dennis made some adjustments, but I believe there are some other areas, so I'd like to just be able to turn to our budget. It'll be easier that way,
Okay.
okay?
Are you saying, Mrs. Sher, you'd like that page
Yeah,
pulled out of the
page
budget to
82,
discuss
page
separately?
82.
Okay.
Right.
Of the, for the superintendent's services. Dennis, by the way, there would have been an adjustment because of Dr. Echo. You didn't have the $800 difference. That compensated for the car difference, remember?
I did under
We had
mileage.
4,000.
There was 4,800 in there, and I put it up $600
No, I'm
to
talking annuity.
54.
Annuity. His annuity cost went down 800.
Okay.
Right,
To
but
offset.
Dr. Helko had that life insurance
Right.
up for him.
For
Just get to the
800
idea.
more.
Just get to the
Strike
page,
costs.
Vicki.
Strike costs.
Ideas. What
She's
do you
right.
want to tell us?
I am, strike costs.
Okay. We haven't noted that one already. And the next one?
Okay, and the other, Donna's already gotten the one regarding the teaming and the situation, the cost situation that's coming out of the separation of 8th and 9th grade. And then the other's just the data processing. I'd still like to see a recommendation of what would be recommended if we were to go to 3. And the cost. Dennis, you have the dollars already, right?
Yes, I do.
For me?
Go to what, Vicki?
So those are the items that
The
Dr.
salary.
Persing will be prepared to talk about. We'll put them on the agenda and have a formal agenda for there'll be a committee meeting after the action meeting, okay?
And an executive session that
And
night.
there'll be an executive session after that to discuss
So we don't
personnel
need a
matters.
babysitter now?
We will not have it again tonight.
What's that?
This Thursday night,
You mean 11 or you mean 12?
7:30 on Thursday night. That's what it's called for the arbitrators meeting, to review the arbitrators and vote on the arbitrators report. Okay? So with that, we're adjourned.
Thank you, Rich. Sir.